Chapter 2002, Snowy's Transformation. Chapter 2002, Snowy's Transformation. Is this blood from a magical beast or something? Yuro asked as she uncorked the vial. A distinct scent immediately filled the air, one perceptible only to beasts. Snowy's ears perked up, and her eyes widened with excitement, her instincts awakened by the unmistakable aroma. Like a beast in heat, Snowy pounced onto Yuro, who quickly shouted, "Ah! You're going to make me drop it." However, Snowy didn't move away. Instead, she leaned in even closer, her tongue poking out eagerly as she pressed her head toward the vial, like someone desperately trying to catch a single drop of water in the desert. Okay. I get it. Here. Yuro said in a flustered tone as she quickly poured the blood onto Snowy's outstretched tongue. The moment the blood touched her taste buds, Snowy's entire body quivered with delight, her pupils dilating as a surge of satisfaction rushed through her. In the very next moment, Snowy let out a thunderous roar as her aura exploded outward, wild and untamed, shaking the air around her. Meanwhile, notifications began appearing before Yuro. Snowy's bloodline is transforming. Yuro exclaimed after seeing these notifications. What? Really? Bai Lianhua and Xia Jingyi were just as surprised to hear this. What was that blood you fed her? Yuro turned to look at Yuan for answers. Yuan smiled and said, "It's my blood." Huh? Yuro and the others stared at him with wide eyes, seemingly unable to comprehend it. My bloodline is quite unique and has the ability to evolve a beast's bloodline. It's not guaranteed, but it has a higher chance of working on those with a weaker bloodline. What an incredible ability, as expected of my brother, Yuro murmured with quiet admiration. She then glanced at Snowy, who had suddenly crouched down, her massive form curling slightly as if she had suddenly drifted off to sleep. She'll be fine. Just give her some time to evolve her bloodline, Yuan explained. Yuro nodded. Some time later, Yuro spoke in a faint, dispirited voice. "Brother, are you going to leave again soon?" "No, I'll be staying at the super perfect physique tempering sect for some time to let my body finish merging some more." Yuro's expression immediately brightened, and she asked, "Then, can I spend more time with you?" "Of course," he nodded. They continued chatting for almost an entire day until Bai Lianhua said, "It was very nice seeing you again, Yuan. I'd like to stay here for longer, but I have a lot of work to do at the faction. Let's meet again soon. See you later." Xia Jingyi spoke in a timid voice. "Before you go, let me give you something." Yuan transferred several techniques to them, bestowing cultivation and martial arts methods to Bai Lianhua, while entrusting Xia Jingyi with a collection of profound zither techniques. These are ancient and mythic rank techniques. Bai Lianhua exclaimed in shock after realizing what Yuan had given her. Xia Jingyi was too shocked to even say anything. "No need to thank me. Just consider it a gift for taking care of my sister when I couldn't," Yuan said. "You can leave without me." "I'll stay here for a little longer," Yuro said. "Okay." Once Bai Lianhua and Xia Jingyi left, Mei Xiu and Chu Liuxiang also left a little bit later, leaving Yuan and Yuro alone. "How long are you going to stay?" Yuro asked him. "I'll stay here until you want to leave," he said. "Are you sure? Don't you have a lot of things to do?" "Yes, but they can wait for now." "In that case, I'll stay here as long as possible." Over the next several days, Yuro and Yuan spent their time reminiscing about their childhood. Yuan would often play the zither for her, guide her through her cultivation, and pass down several techniques to help her grow stronger. Time passed quickly, and before they realized, they'd spent almost an entire month inside Senior Bai's world. "I'll leave tomorrow," Yuro said. Although she wanted to spend more time with Yuan, she knew that she couldn't keep him there forever. "Okay." Later that night. "Brother, can I sleep with you tonight?" Yuro knocked on his door and asked. "You're not a child anymore, you know." "So what? I still want to snuggle with you like we used to." "I'm coming in." Inside his room, Yuan was seated on the floor. "You're cultivating?" Now that I've reached immortal ascension, I don't need to sleep anymore, Yuan explained. In fact, I feel far more rested through cultivation than I would from sleeping. Since this is going to be my last day with you, sleep with me. She pulled him off the floor and dragged him to the bed. You may have grown up, but you're still a bit spoiled, aren't you? Yuan said with a warm smile. Yuro didn't reply, but a quiet smile spread across her face. A few quiet minutes passed as they lay side by side on the bed. Then, in a soft voice, Yuro whispered, "Brother. What is it? When do you think you'll be able to travel to the 9 heavens?" Hard to say. After all, we need someone who can activate the teleportation device on Earth, but the Lord has already sacrificed his cultivation to open it. He continued, "Even if you make it to the 9 heavens, what will you do then?" "I want to go where you go," she immediately said. "That's too dangerous. There's no way I can bring you to the places you'll be going. I don't need to be exactly by your side. I just want to be near enough so you can visit more conveniently. But you can do that already through the myriad of techniques. It doesn't feel the same." She sighed. "I want to be with you physically, not in this avatar." Eventually, Yuro drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, the kind she hadn't experienced in years. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2003, Meeting Li Jinxi. Chapter 2003, Meeting Li Jinxi. The following morning, Yuro slowly opened her eyes. "Brother," she whispered, a warm smile blossoming on her face as she gazed at Yuan, peacefully asleep beside her. A sudden impulse stirred within her, and after a brief moment of hesitation, she leaned in and pressed a soft, gentle kiss on his lips. Yuan opened his eyes a few moments later. "Good morning, brother." Yuro acted normally, but her face was flushed with redness. "Morning." Yuan sat up, pretending like he didn't notice the kiss. "I'll make breakfast," Yuro said as she got off the bed and left the room. After she left, Yuan released a deep sigh. With his experience, there was no way he hadn't noticed it. Yuro's feelings for him went beyond simple sibling affection. While it might appear as familial love on the surface, he could clearly sense the deeper emotions she tried to hide. Even if they weren't blood-related, they had grown up together as siblings, and that bond carried weight. Yuan wasn't sure how he would respond if Yuro ever chose to confess her feelings. Would he be able to accept her, or would that line between them remain one he couldn't cross? Sometime later, after eating breakfast, they made their way to the exit. "Brother, do you think I'll be able to see you again soon?" she asked. He nodded and said, "I'll try to meet you again before I return to my journey." "Okay. It's a promise." Yuro suddenly embraced him tightly. "Take this before you go." Yuan retrieved a spatial ring and offered it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "There are a few treasures inside that will help you if you ever get yourself into trouble that you cannot handle." "Thank you." Once Yuro left, Yuan also left the myriad of techniques and returned to the super perfect physique tempering sect. "Wow, I didn't think you'd spend an entire month with Yuro," Chu Liuxiang remarked when he returned. "A month is nothing if you consider how long we've been apart," he said. "That's true. What are you going to do now?" Meishio asked. "I'll stay at this sect for a little longer. Also, there's still someone I need to talk to." "Oh, you mean Jinxi?" Chu Liuxiang said. He nodded and said, "She's definitely waiting for me." "Good luck," Meishio said. Yuan left to find Li Jinxi shortly afterward. After asking around, he made his way to the training grounds, but not the one reserved exclusively for the sect leader. Instead, he headed to the grounds designated for sect elders, where Li Jinxi was known to train. She often sparred with the elders, as none of the regular disciples were strong enough to challenge her. When he arrived, Li Jinxi was in the middle of a sparring match with a sect elder who was at the bronze immortal stage while only being at the peak of divine ancestor herself. Moreover, though faint, Li Jinxi was unmistakably using immortal qi. No matter how many times I witness it, it still amazes me how she can wield immortal qi at her current cultivation level. She's a true prodigy. I heard she had just stepped into the divine realm when she joined the sect around 5 years ago. If she'd arrived a few years earlier, she might already be an immortal by now. Her combat experience is frighteningly high for someone her age. I heard she's not even 100 years old, yet she fights like someone who's lived through millennia of battle. Yuan could hear the murmurs of the sect elders watching from the sidelines, their voices laced with awe and deep respect for Li Jinxi's talent and rapid rise. Eventually, the sparring ended in a draw. As amazing as always, Lady Ji. The sect elder clasped his hands together and gave her a polite bow. Thank you for your time. Ji Linshi returned the bow. No, the pleasure is mine. It's an honor to exchange swords with a genius like you. By the way, my grandson, who's a core disciple here, asked me to. The sect elder abruptly stopped mid-sentence, his gaze shifting as he noticed Li Jinxi had turned her head, her attention clearly fixed elsewhere. Everyone quickly noticed her sudden distraction and turned to see what had caught her attention, only to find an unfamiliar, strikingly handsome man standing there, someone none of them recognized. I didn't think you'd actually come see me, Li Jinxi suddenly said. Why wouldn't I? You visited everyone but me, and that was a month ago. I was going to visit you sooner, but I ended up staying with you Ro for longer than anticipated. Relax, I'm aware. I was just joking with you. Yuan was speechless. Li Jinxi wasn't the type to joke around. How much has she changed since we last met? He wondered inwardly. Do you remember our arrangements? Li Jinxi suddenly asked. Of course. I'll take you on any time. Then meet me at the place you sparred with Senior Kellen a month ago tomorrow, she said before flying away. Yuan could only stand there with a dazed look on his face. Excuse me, but who are you? One of the sect elders suddenly asked, snapping him out of his daze. I'm just a guest. After saying that, Yuan activated Shadow Veil and disappeared before them like a ghost. The following day, Yuan made his way to the White Space Training Ground. Not seeing Li Jinxi outside, he decided to head inside to check if she was already there. Sure enough, once inside, he could see Li Jinxi standing not far away with the Golden Empress already in her grasp. Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. Fight me with everything you have from the very start, Li Jinxi said calmly, her gaze locked with Yuan's. If you hold back or look down on me, I won't forgive you. Yuan gave a silent nod in response, his expression unreadable. Join privilege for 50 ADV chapters. Only available in the app. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2004, Li Jinxi's True Feelings. Chapter 2004, Li Jinxi's True Feelings. Come at me whenever you're ready. Li Jinxi said as she unleashed her full cultivation and as much immortal chi as she could muster without going out of control. However, despite her seemingly confident expression, Li Jinxi already knew that she wouldn't be able to defeat Yuan, who could fight on par with God Ascension cultivators. In response, Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven and activated God of War's astral arts from the get-go. Here I come, Yuan warned her before speeding toward her. Li Jinxi raised her sword high and swung with all her might, unleashing a powerful technique that made the very air around them tremble with its force. Yet with a single, effortless motion, Yuan swung his sword, shattering her technique completely, as though it were no more than a breeze before a storm. Li Jinxi gritted her teeth and unleashed one technique after another in rapid succession, each strike fueled by relentless determination. But Yuan didn't even bother to defend. He continued to approach her, allowing every attack to land directly on his body, unflinching, as if her efforts couldn't even reach him. Damn it! Li Jinxi roared as she unleashed her strongest technique. Golden Empress Absolute Decree. Suddenly, a golden energy surged around the Golden Empress in Li Jinxi's grasp, radiating a powerful pressure that rippled through the air. Had she unleashed this technique during her spar with the sect elder the day before, there was no doubt she would have claimed victory with ease. However, Li Jinxi didn't stop there and infused the energy with immortal chi and enhanced sword aura. Seeing this, Yuan tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes narrowing as he prepared to meet her strike head-on. In the next moment, Yuan swung his sword, channeling immortal chi through the blade and layering it with enhanced sword aura. A split second later, their swords collided, unleashing a shockwave so powerful it sent ripples through the air and carved fractures into the very fabric of space around them. Jinxi had expected to hold her ground for at least a few seconds, but the instant their swords collided, the overwhelming force behind Yuan's strike shattered her balance. Before she could react, her body was hurled through the air, utterly powerless to resist. Jinxi coughed up a mouthful of blood, her body trembling as she struggled to rise to her feet. So I couldn't even withstand a single strike from him, huh? Jinxi let out a quiet breath and stopped trying to stand. Instead, she remained on the ground, her gaze drifting upward as she stared into the endless white space, her expression dazed. Seeing this, Yuan withdrew his sword and approached her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "No, I'm not," she replied without hesitation. "No matter how hard I try, no matter how much effort I put in, I still can't seem to catch up to you." "Why are you so hung up on catching up?" "It's not like I will leave you behind or anything," Yuan said. "In fact, you're soaring when compared to the others." She glared at him and said, "How else am I supposed to get you to accept me?" "What?" Yuan raised his eyebrows, puzzled by her words. "If it isn't obvious by now, I have regained my memories as Jinxi," she said. "And with them came everything she carried, such as her experiences, and her feelings for you. I'm well aware of that, but those memories belong to your previous life." "So what?" she snapped, her voice trembling with frustration. "Are you saying I should just cast aside everything I felt and experienced back then? Even if that life ended and we've been reborn, we're still the same soul, still the same people." She took a breath, her eyes locked onto his. "What about Meishou and Chu Liuxiang? You accepted them in this life. So why can't you accept me?" Yuan let out a quiet sigh and said, "While it's true that my feelings for them have strengthened after regaining my memories, I've known and loved them long before my memories returned. Their feelings for me, they were already there, even before they began recalling anything from their past lives." He paused for a moment, his gaze steady as he continued. "But you..." He stopped there, not because he didn't want to continue, but because he couldn't. Yuan didn't know Jinxi's feelings well enough to say more. When they had first met, she had seemed like nothing more than a battle fanatic. Their relationship had never felt like anything deeper than companionship, similar to how he viewed the other members of the Demon Sealing faction, though perhaps, just slightly more. If Jinxi's feelings for him had only awakened after regaining Jinxi's memories, then to Yuan, it felt less like love born naturally, and more like something inherited, even forced, and he wasn't sure how to respond to it. Jinxi quickly understood what he was trying to say. "So you think I only feel this way because of my past life?" she asked, her voice tight with emotion. She clenched her fists before shouting, "That's not true. I've had these feelings for you long before my memories as Jinxi returned. I've never been good with words, or expressing my feelings." Her voice softened, and her face flushed with redness as she continued. "Yes, Jinxi's memories helped me understand my emotions better, and they strengthened what I already felt. But don't think for a second that I didn't already love you before then." Jinxi's mind drifted back to their first encounter on the stage at the Jaded Garden. At the time, she hadn't recognized it for what it was, but she eventually realized that she had started falling for him in the middle of that very battle, and that feeling would only continue to grow as they continued to spar and spend more time with each other. Unfortunately, fighting was the only thing she excelled at. To others, it may have seemed like she viewed Yuan as nothing more than a rival, someone to challenge and chase. But in truth, it had always been more than that, and she just never knew how to show it. Chapter 2005, A New Addition to the Family. Chapter 2005, A New Addition to the Family. After listening to Jinxi's confession, Yuan smiled and said, "I'm flattered you feel that way about me, but I wasn't doubting your feelings." He continued, "After all, even though I have reincarnated many times, the feelings my incarnations experienced and their emotions are still mine, but not everyone will think like me. I just wanted to make sure that was what you really wanted. I am certain that's what I want, she responded with a serious face. I see. So. Li Jinxi sat up and stared at him intently, clearly waiting for his response. Yuan extended his hands toward her and smiled. I was unable to answer Jean Zai's feelings because I lacked the courage before, and I lost her before I could. This time, however, I will not make the same mistake. Li Jinxi gently took his hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Does that mean? Before she could finish, Yuan pulled her to her feet, and straight into his arms. Without a word, he leaned in and pressed a soft, tender kiss to her lips. Li Jinxi's eyes widened with surprise, but she quickly closed her eyes to enjoy the moment. Ah, so this is what it feels like to be finally accepted. She had spent thousands of years chasing after Tian Xian, only to meet a lonely, unfulfilled end, so one could only imagine the fulfillment Li Jinxi, who had her experience and emotions, was feeling at this moment. Let's go back to my place, Li Jinxi said afterward. She wanted to embrace him on the spot, but she was afraid that someone else might enter the training ground and witness it. Yuan nodded, and the two of them left the training ground the next moment. Once they arrived at her living quarters, Li Jinxi brought Yuan directly to the bedroom, where she immediately removed her robes, revealing her defined and flawlessly toned body. What do you think? She asked, her face flushed with redness. It's beautiful. Yuan smiled before kissing her all over her body. Once Yuan was finished, Li Jinxi swapped roles and began licking all of his body. Many moments later, Yuan inserted his sword into her scabbard, connecting their bodies together. The room soon echoed with Li Jinxi's blissful cries, a sound so pure and unrestrained, unlike anything she had ever made before. Time slipped by unnoticed as they lost themselves in waves of pleasure, the outside world forgotten. Before they realized it, days had passed. Though it was her first experience, Li Jinxi's monstrous endurance allowed her to cultivate with him for days without rest. It's a pity that my first experience is through my avatar. Li Jinxi sighed. Does it really matter? It feels no different from your real body, Yuan commented. No, there is a difference. Yuan couldn't refute her words. Once a cultivator reached a certain level, the subtle flaws in an avatar became apparent. Though it might feel identical to a real body at first, there were nuanced differences. After all, no matter how powerful a formation might be, it was impossible to perfectly replicate one's physical body using only the soul. What are you going to do now? Li Jinxi asked him. I'll continue to stay here until I have a solid plan. I see. By the way. Li Jinxi paused, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. Which of us is going to tell Meishou and Liu Xiang about this? Caught up in the moment, she had completely forgotten that Yuan already had two official partners. And now, she had crossed that line with him, without ever speaking to them first. Yuan smiled and said, "We can do it together." Do you think they'll be angry? She asked. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely, since they're just like you. Li Jinxi felt slightly better and silently nodded, but she wasn't completely relieved. Some time later, Yuan and Li Jinxi met up with Meishou and Chu Liuxiang. This might be sudden, but I've decided to accept Li Jinxi into the family, Yuan said, getting straight to the point without hesitation. Chu Liuxiang and Meishou didn't respond immediately. Instead, they turned to face each other and exchanged silent glances, their expressions unreadable. Sorry, I know I should have come to you two first for permission, but just as Li Jinxi opened her mouth to speak, Chu Liuxiang smiled and said, "Why do you need our permission? It's not like we own him. If he accepted you, then that's that." Meishou nodded and added, "We have long accepted the fact that hell add more people into the family. Honestly, I'm a little surprised it took this long." Chu Liuxiang chuckled and continued, "Right? I was expecting you to join the family long ago." Li Jinxi was speechless. She never thought they'd be so calm and accepting. However, now that she thought about it, the two of them wouldn't have been able to coexist with each other if they couldn't accept Yuan having multiple partners. "Anyway, welcome to the family, Jinxi," Meishou said. "Thank you." Li Jinxi didn't know what else to say. So, who else do you plan on adding to the family? Chu Liuxiang turned to look at Yuan. He responded with a weird smile, don't make it sound like I have a list of potential partners. I don't have anything planned. Considering how many lives you've lived, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a few more additions to the family soon, she chuckled. After chatting for a while, Li Jinxi and Chu Liuxiang eventually returned to their own living quarters, leaving Yuan to spend the week with Meishu. The following week, he devoted his time to Chu Liuxiang, and then to Li Jinxi the week after. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed, and it was once again time to visit Yu Rou and the others at the myriad of techniques. However, upon their arrival, an unexpected figure appeared. Yuan? You're back? It was none other than Senior Bai. Chapter 2006, Faceless Sword Emperor. Chapter 2006, Faceless Sword Emperor. It's been a while, Senior Bai. Yuan greeted him with a warm smile. Indeed, it has been a while. Last I heard from you, you were still in the 6th heaven. Where are you right now? Senior Bai asked. I'm currently in the 7th heaven, and I've been staying at Kellen's sect for the last several months, he said. What? Senior Bai frowned after hearing this. You've been at Kellen's place for several months already? How come I didn't hear anything about this from him? Oh, he went into seclusion shortly after I showed up. Senior Bai rubbed his eyes and sighed, that meathead, he should have at least notified me about your return before he went into seclusion. Yuan chuckled before asking, how have you been? Same as usual, but I've been spending more time at my sect, he said. Your sect, that would be the gates of heaven, correct? Yuan recalled participating in a trial that required him to fight a disciple from this sect. Yes, that's correct. Whenever you have the time, you should visit. There's one within the 7th heaven, as well. As well? There's more than one gates of heaven? Chu Liuxiang asked. Senior Bai nodded and explained, I have 3 sects, one in the 5th heaven, the 7th heaven, and the 9th heaven. Of course, they all share the same name and are essentially the same sect. What is the purpose of having 3 sects? Bai Lianhua asked out of curiosity. It's quite pointless to have multiple sects if you place them all in the same realm. However, if you spread them apart, you'll be able to gain many more disciples. Also, it gives those in the lower heavens another method of ascending. I see. Bai Lianhua muttered, as she'd been contemplating branching out her faction recently. Senior Bai turned to look at Yuan and continued, the next Sword Emperor qualifications will be happening soon, and it'll take place within the gates of heaven. You use the sword, right? You might learn a thing or two if you go. Sword Emperor qualifications? What is that? Li Jinxi asked, her curiosity piqued. Senior Bai then explained, in the world of sword masters, the highest attainable title is the Sword Emperor, much like how blacksmiths have the title God of Creation, and alchemists have the God of Alchemy. The Sword Emperor is, in essence, the God of Swords. However, there can be multiple Sword Emperors. The Sword Emperor qualification is exactly what it sounds like, an event where sword masters compete for the chance to earn the title of Sword Emperor. Sword Emperor. Yuan muttered. Li Jinxi glanced over at Yuan. In Jin Zai's memories, Tian Xian also acquired the title of Sword Emperor. In fact, he was the strongest Sword Emperor in history. How does one join this event? Yuan suddenly asked. Senior Bai smiled and said, are you looking to join? Unfortunately, even with your talents, it'd be impossible for you to join in your current state. Only those who have achieved Supreme Sword Aura may join, after all. Supreme Sword Aura, huh? Indeed, I can't use that right now. However, if I have enough time. Yuan showed a confident smile. When is the event happening? It's going to happen in 7 years. 7 years? Yuan raised his eyebrows. I thought you said it'd be soon. That's quite far away. 7 years is nothing for immortals like me. I guess that's true. Anyway, 7 years should be more than enough for me to master Supreme Sword Aura, Yuan said casually. Senior Bai stared at him, utterly dumbfounded. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Most cultivators spent their entire lives unable to even grasp enhanced sword aura, let alone supreme sword aura. And the participants in the Sword Emperor qualification? Nearly all of them would be God Ascension realm experts who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Well, if you're truly serious about mastering supreme sword aura, Senior Bai said thoughtfully, then you should visit the Holy Sword Temple. It's a unique place that exists beyond the bounds of the 9 heavens, and nearly every sword emperor throughout history has gone there to learn their supreme sword aura. In fact, the strongest sword emperor in history, the Faceless Sword Emperor, also trained there. Faceless Sword Emperor. Yuan raised his eyebrows at this title. Senior Bai mistook Yuan's reaction as intrigue and explained, the Faceless Sword Emperor earned his title because he always wore a mask and almost nobody knew his true identity. He had other titles such as the Undefeated Sword Emperor and the Mystical Sword Emperor. He's one of the most revered figures in the world of sword masters. Jinxi couldn't help but smile after hearing this. The Faceless Sword Emperor was, without doubt, Tian Xian. Senior Bai continued, no one knows where the Faceless Sword Emperor came from, only that from the very beginning of his recorded history, he lived as an undefeated prodigy. However, just as mysterious as his rise was his disappearance. After attaining the title of Sword Emperor, he vanished without a trace, almost as if he had never existed at all. He lifted his head to look at the clear blue sky and sighed, to tell you the truth, I've encountered him once. However, he was just passing by, and I was only a snooty little brat back then. Though I was a mortal, I could tell how formidable he was at a glance. He was a true monster, one that might rival even you, Yuan. Yuan smiled and said, all right, I've decided. I'll visit the Holy Sword Temple next. Of course, it wasn't solely because he wanted to participate in the Sword Emperor qualifications. If he wanted to fight and kill God Ascension realm cultivators, he'd need to learn Supreme Sword Aura eventually. I should have mentioned this first, but not just anyone can enter the Holy Sword Temple. You'll need a referral and then pass a test before you can train there, Senior Bai suddenly said. Chapter 2007, The Great One's Appearance. Chapter 2007, The Great One's Appearance, Referral? From whom? Yuan asked. Only sword emperors and reputable sword masters are allowed to give out referrals. Fortunately, we have someone in the faction who can give you a referral. I'll contact them after this. Okay. What about the test? Oh, it's quite simple. Your enhanced sword aura just needs to be powerful enough to damage the sword wall at the Holy Sword Temple. I see. Should be doable. By the way, what is your cultivation at right? Senior Bai stopped his sentence midway when Yuan exuded some of his cultivation, as had been suppressing it. Peak of Immortal Ascension? Senior Bai almost couldn't believe his eyes. The last time they met, Yuan was still in the spirit realm. His cultivation increased by an entire major realm in less than a decade? At this rate, he'll become an immortal by our next meeting. Is my cultivation not enough? Yuan asked. No, there shouldn't be any problems as long as you can use enhanced sword aura. Yuan nodded. Then there's no problem. He showed off his enhanced sword aura, which had reached its maximum mastery long ago. Even in the 9th heaven, only a handful of prodigies have ever managed to attain enhanced sword aura before reaching the immortal realm, Senior Bai said, swallowing nervously. But none of them could hold a candle to your level. That's only natural, Chu Liuxiang remarked in a prideful tone, acting like she was the one being praised. By the way, about what happened at the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Senior Bai suddenly brought up the topic, his tone more serious now. It was an incident witnessed by the celestial overlords, after all. Are you okay? Do you know why the Heavens Mandate and the Celestial Emperor showed up, even causing such a major scene? Though Yuan trusted Senior Bai deeply enough to entrust his life to him, he chose not to reveal everything. He didn't want to drag him into such a dangerous matter, especially with the Celestial Overlord situation. I don't know why, but I think the Celestial Emperor doesn't want me in the 9 heavens, he said while shaking his head. Senior Bai became silent. He was aware of the Celestial Emperor's curse, and while he never figured out why the Celestial Emperor would target Yuan, he knew there was something between them. If you ever find yourself in a situation that you cannot handle alone, don't hesitate to rely on us, on the Celestial Overlords. Regardless of your rank, you're still one of us, so as long as you didn't commit any crimes, we'll back you with our full power. Senior Bai could tell that Yuan wasn't revealing everything, but he didn't press. He trusted Yuan, and believed that, when the time was right, he would share the truth on his own terms. Yuan offered a grateful smile and said, "I'll keep that in mind." "Thank you. Anyway, I won't intrude on your time any longer. I'll leave now to speak with that individual who will give you a referral." With that, Senior Bai left shortly after. "Looks like you'll be busy again soon, brother." Yuro sighed. Senior Bai didn't mention how long it'll take for him to get that referral, so I might still have some time left to spend with you, he said. Not wanting to waste any time, they began chatting with each other, talking about their recent experiences and future plans. Eventually, everyone but Yuro and Yuan left. The siblings spent the next week with each other like their last meeting. "If I don't show up for the next meeting, that means I have already left. Don't worry, it'll be okay, even if it'll be a little lonely," Yuro said softly as she embraced him. "Now that you've regained your body, the thing I worried about most is finally behind us." Meanwhile, after he left, Senior Bai reported to Su Jiechi about Yuan's return and Kellen's blunder. "I see, so he's regained his true body and traveled to the 9 heavens with it." Su Jiechi muttered to herself after hearing the report, a sense of relief washing over her. "By the way, did you ask him about what happened at the Dragon Spiral Mountain?" she suddenly asked. "Yes, but he didn't say much. However, he's definitely hiding something, though." Su Jiechi sighed. "It's fine. He probably doesn't want to cause us any trouble. My father was also like that. He'd always try to solve everything on his own. Now then, about the Holy Sword Temple. I'll contact that person myself," she continued. Senior Bai smiled and said, "That's relieving to hear. I don't want to deal with that eccentric person." "I know," she calmly remarked. Some time later, after finishing her current work, Su Jiechi left to find this eccentric person to give Yuan the referral. Meanwhile, at the Azure Dragon clan, just as peace had become the norm, an unfathomable presence suddenly descended out of nowhere, blanketing their entire territory in a suffocating pressure. Upon sensing the overwhelming presence, everyone in the city froze in terror. Not a single soul dared to move, let alone glance around in search of the source, as immense fear gripped their hearts. Jianghu and the others immediately stopped their cultivation and rushed out of their residences, moving toward the source of the presence, which was rapidly closing in on them. However, despite the audacity with which this individual had unleashed their presence across the Azure Dragon clan's territory, not a single member felt offended, nor did they approach with anger. Instead, they felt a deep sense of humility, as if standing in the presence of something far beyond themselves. Moments later, Zhao Zhenhai and the other clan members came face to face with the individual. He stood half-naked, his upper torso exposed, revealing a physique so flawless it was as though heaven itself had craved it. His long, golden hair flowed behind him with unnatural grace, swaying gently as if caught in a soft breeze, even though they were all submerged in water. "The Azure Dragon clan humbly greets the Great One." Zhao Zhenhai and the others called out in unison, their heads lowered in deep submission and reverence, their voices echoing with solemn respect. Chapter 2008, The Great One's Appearance, 2. Chapter 2008, The Great One's Appearance, 2. Despite the Great One's seemingly sudden appearance, the Azure Dragon clan was not surprised at all. In fact, they'd anticipated his appearance when they learned that it was Dragon Goddess Yao who had stopped the Mystic Sea Dragon clan's invasion from Yuan. The Great One narrowed his golden eyes, his naturally arrogant gaze sweeping over the Azure Dragon clan like he had absolute authority over them. "So, you've anticipated my arrival, have you?" he said, his voice calm yet imposing. "Then you must also know why I'm here. Let's not waste time and tell me what I want to know. Is it true that Dragon Goddess Yao appeared here recently?" "Yes, that is correct. Jiao Zhenhai didn't dare to lie before the Great One since he could see through everything. Tell me everything, and do it from the very beginning. If you dare try to mislead me or leave even the slightest details out, it'll completely wipe your bloodline from existence. Do I make myself clear? The Great One's aura surged in a threatening manner. Jiao Zhenhai and the others trembled beneath the weight of the Great One's overwhelming presence. Knowing full well that this being did not bluff or tolerate deceit, Zhenhai quickly recalled everything, from the moment their family had been poisoned by the Mystic Sea Dragon clan, to their fateful encounter with Yuan, and ultimately, the appearance of Dragon Goddess Yao herself, which ended up driving the Mystic Sea Dragon clan away. Yuan. The Great One narrowed his eyes after hearing this familiar name. However, no matter how vast his experience or knowledge, there was simply no way he could have linked Yuan's existence to the immortal monarch, even with all the information he had been given. Even with the information that Yuan possessed the immortal monarch's blood, he assumed it had been bestowed upon him by Dragon Goddess Yao. I need more information. The Great One set his sights on the Holy Dragon clan next. Before leaving the Azure Dragon clan, the Great One said, since you've experienced Dragon Goddess Yu's prowess firsthand, I want you to do some quick comparison. Without warning, he suddenly unleashed a surge of his aura, so immense that it didn't just engulf the Azure Dragon clan's territory, but swept across the entire sea of dragons like a tidal wave. The sudden eruption of aura startled every living entity within the sea, sending beasts and cultivators alike fleeing from his direction as if their very lives depended on it. Within the Azure Dragon clan, the pressure was unbearable and so overwhelming that even the strongest among them coughed up mouthfuls of blood. Not even a God Ascension realm cultivator like Jiao Zhenhai was spared. Fortunately, the Great One quickly retracted his aura a second later, or everyone around him would have died from the pressure alone. If you were to compare my aura to that of Dragon Goddess Yao, the Great One asked, his voice devoid of guilt or apology, how did I measure up? Would you say I'm stronger? After taking a moment to catch his breath, Jiao Zhenhai responded, your aura was definitely stronger than what I felt from Dragon Goddess Yao. A satisfied smile tugged at the corners of the Great One's handsome face. Without another word, he turned and soared away, his figure cutting through the water like it didn't exist as he headed straight toward the Holy Dragon clan. A heavy silence lingered over the Azure Dragon clan and the underwater city, persisting long after the Great One had departed. Eventually, Jiao Zhenhai let out a deep, weary sigh. I have the feeling that even if we had succeeded in claiming the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, the Great One still wouldn't have offered us his help. The others silently nodded, agreeing with him. A few days later, the Great One arrogantly announced his arrival by engulfing the entire Dragon's Spiral Mountain in his overwhelming presence, just as he did to the Azure Dragon clan. Immediately, the Holy Dragon Emperor approached him and greeted, the Holy Dragon clan greets the Great One. The Great One narrowed his eyes and remarked, just like the Azure Dragon clan, you anticipated my appearance. Did Dragon Goddess Yao warn you that I'd show up? No, but knowing your history with her, anyone would make this assumption, he said. Then you must also know why I am here. Yes. It's true that Dragon Goddess Yao has returned. The Holy Dragon Emperor admitted. Based on the Great One's earlier comment, the Holy Dragon Emperor knew that he had visited the Azure Dragon clan prior to showing up at the Holy Dragon clan, so there was no reason to hide it, and it only enraged him. Tell me everything you know, said the Great One, his overbearing tone leaving no room for discussion. However, the Holy Dragon Emperor shook his head and said, unfortunately, that is not possible. The Great One narrowed his eyes ever so slightly, fixing the Holy Dragon Emperor with a gaze that radiated silent menace. Since I am in a good mood, I'll pretend I didn't hear your last sentence. You better choose your next words wisely, or I might sink the Dragon's Spiral Mountain by accident, said the Great One as his aura began to surge violently. Who knows? It might even summon Dragon Goddess Yao once she learns of it. Why are you still chasing after Dragon Goddess Yao? I heard she wants nothing to do with you. Aren't you afraid of incurring her wrath? I might have feared her in the past, but things are different now. I don't know where she has been this entire time, but I am quite certain that I have surpassed her during her absence. Once I find her, I am going to battle and defeat her. In the past, when the Great One pursued Dragon Goddess Yao, she would always say that she'd only accept someone stronger than herself, hence why he'd started collecting treasures and using them to strengthen himself. Chapter 2009, The Great One's Appearance, 3. Chapter 2009, The Great One's Appearance, 3. The Holy Dragon Emperor could only sigh inwardly after hearing the Great One's declaration, that he'd defeat Dragon Goddess Yao. While it was true that Dragon Goddess Yao may not have been improving her strength since her disappearance because she'd lost her body, and her soul had split into several parts, nobody could say for certain that the Great One had surpassed her, but it was definitely a possibility. Once I defeat her, I'll finally obtain the one thing I've yearned but failed to claim in this life, the Great One declared, his eyes burning with fervent determination. The Holy Dragon Emperor narrowed his eyes at the Great One's words, which carried an unsettling undertone, as if he saw Dragon Goddess Yao not as a person, but as something to be claimed. In any case, I cannot help you. They didn't mention where they'd go after leaving the Dragon Spiral Mountain. The smile on the Great One's face slowly disappeared, and he responded, maybe, but I won't know for sure until I force it out of you. How many do I have to kill to make you talk? Half. The Holy Dragon Emperor sneered in disdain, you may have gotten stronger over the years, but your character has fallen quite lowly, Great One. Even if you kill everyone, my answer will remain the same. I don't know where Dragon Goddess Yao went. The Great One said nothing in return, but his aura surged violently, speaking louder than any words ever could. The Holy Dragon Emperor wasted no time, instantly transforming into his dragon form. Though he knew full well that the Great One stood as an even greater threat than the Celestial Emperor had been, he refused to retreat. Defeat was likely, but cowering was never an option. It's been a while since a dragon has dared to defy me, so I'll enjoy this for a while. Moments later, the Great One and the Holy Dragon Emperor collided in a thunderous clash, their fierce exchanges unleashing shockwaves in every direction, each impact chipping away at the Dragon Spiral Mountain, piece by piece. Heavens! The Great One is attacking us. What should we do? The Holy Dragon clan was thrown into momentary panic, but their hesitation didn't last. Just like when the Celestial Emperor attacked, they surged forward to assist him, even if their efforts barely made a dent in the overwhelming power of the Great One. Though the Great One's individual power surpassed even that of the Celestial Emperor, the Holy Dragon clan managed to hold out against him far longer than expected. Of course, this endurance was only possible because the Great One was clearly holding back. If the Great One had gone all out from the beginning, the Holy Dragon clan would have perished almost instantly. Eventually, the Great One hovered alone above the Dragon Spiral Mountain, his presence dominating the skies. Below him, the Holy Dragon Emperor and the rest of the clan lay scattered across the battered landscape, defeated and motionless, unable to lift even a finger after their overwhelming defeat. Their fight had attracted many spectators again, though not as many as when the Celestial Emperor attacked. What the hell? Isn't that the Great One? Why is he attacking the Holy Dragon clan, too? I don't know what the Holy Dragon clan did, but to offend both the Celestial Emperor and the Great One, they're fated to be erased from existence soon. And since it's the Great One, the other royal dragon clans wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Some time later, the Great One's voice echoed across the battered peaks, loud and clear, rippling through the mountain like thunder. Though I do not wish to do this because of my respect for Dragon Goddess Yao, your defiance cannot go unpunished. As retribution, I shall destroy the final Dragon Spiral Mountain in the 9 heavens. The Great One raised a single finger, and in an instant, an overwhelming aura surged from his body. At the tip of his finger, a small orb of condensed energy began to form, glowing intensely. It rapidly expanded, growing larger and brighter until it blazed in the sky like a miniature sun, radiating power that shook the heavens. Moments later, the Great One gave a casual flick of his finger, and the blazing miniature sun shot through the air toward the mountain. As it descended, the heat radiating from it was so intense that it caused the surrounding sea to boil violently, sending waves of steam rising into the heavens. The Holy Dragon clan could do nothing but watch in helpless silence as the blazing sun descended upon them. One by one, they began to close their eyes, not out of fear, but in solemn acceptance of the death they could no longer escape. However, amid the chaos and impending doom, a lone figure silently appeared between the descending sun and the dragon's spiral mountain like a ghost. He was small in stature, appearing no older than a young teenager, yet his eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge and unfathomable experience. Strangely, he emitted no presence whatsoever, and his body was semi-transparent, as if he didn't exist within the fabric of reality itself. Though the Holy Dragon clan failed to notice him because of his lack of presence, the Great One did not. The moment his eyes fell upon the small figure, his body tensed, and a flicker of something rare flashed in his eyes: hesitation. Without a word, he clenched his fists, and in an instant, the blazing sun above dissipated, abruptly canceling his attack. What is the meaning of this? The Great One spoke with a frown on his face. It'd be problematic if you were to destroy the dragon's spiral mountain, said the young teenager. I wasn't talking about the dragon's spiral mountain. Why are you here? Isn't it obvious? I'm here to stop you. With an avatar that doesn't even have an ounce of power? The Great One sneered. Are you looking down on me? You're right. I don't have any power in this state, so I cannot physically stop your actions. However, I can offer you a word of advice. If you were to destroy the dragon's spiral mountain, senior sister Yeo will not forgive you, said the young teenager. You speak as if it's a certainty. Both you and Yeo vanished without a trace after that bastard's era came to an end, only to reappear now, at the exact same time. The Great One's eyes narrowed, voice edged with suspicion and frustration. What is the meaning of this? Dragon Ancestor? The Great One's last words shocked all of the spectators. Nobody there could have anticipated the reappearance of the Dragon Ancestor. That teenager is the Dragon Ancestor? The third dragon of origin? I thought he died long ago. No, he simply disappeared, just like Dragon Goddess Yeo. For both of them to show up now, something big will happen in the 9 heavens very soon. As murmurs of concern spread among the spectators, the Dragon Ancestor finally spoke, his tone calm but laced with biting sarcasm. Are you upset we didn't include you? Feeling left out? He paused, his gaze unflinching. Well, maybe that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't spent those days hounding senior sister Yeo like some lovesick, perverted maniac. The Great One trembled, his eyes flaring with rage. Do not mock my feelings for her, he roared. I am not mocking you. I am merely reminding you why senior sister Yeo despised you and why she ultimately chose to keep you out of our group. And if you continue to chase after her like you did in the past, I doubt she'll be able to resist killing you. Ha ha ha. Kill me? Maybe she had that power in the past, but things are different now. I am stronger than her. The Great One laughed. The Dragon Ancestor merely shook his head with a pitiful smile. Oh, you ignorant one. Senior Sister Yu's power is far more than you can fathom, and what you witnessed in the past was merely a fraction of her true power, since neither you nor I was strong enough to make her fight seriously. The Great One was left speechless, his eyes widening in disbelief. What she showed me was only a fraction of her true strength. Even for someone like him, such a thought was difficult to accept, nearly unfathomable. The Dragon Ancestor suddenly glanced down at his body, watching as it began to fade, his form slowly unraveling into fragments of light. Looks like my time is running out, he muttered, then lifted his gaze to meet the Great One's. If you truly intend to destroy the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, there's nothing I can do to stop you. However, bear this in mind, that senior sister Yeo would skin you alive if you did. And instead of chasing after her, why don't you come find me? I'll share with you one of senior sister Yeo's greatest secrets. Before the Great One could respond, the Dragon Ancestor's body vanished as if he had never existed in the first place. The Great One continued to hover above the Dragon's Spiral Mountain long after the Dragon Ancestor had faded, his expression unreadable as he lingered in silence, lost in deep thought. Eventually, the Great One clicked his tongue in annoyance, and without saying a word, he vanished from the skies above the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, leaving behind only the weight of his presence and the silence that followed. The Holy Dragon Emperor could only stare at the sky in disbelief. Looks like we're fated to continue serving Dragon Goddess Yeo, he mumbled. Chapter 2010, The Dragon Ancestor's Unexpected Appearance. Chapter 2010. The Dragon Ancestor's Unexpected Appearance. Shortly after the second incident, news of the events at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain spread through the 9 heavens like wildfire. You will not believe what just happened at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Aren't you a little late to the party? I heard about that literally a day after it happened several months ago. No. This is a new incident that just happened recently. This time, it was the Great One who attacked the Holy Dragon clan at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Heavens! The Great One? You're lying. For dragons like them, that's even worse than offending the Celestial Emperor. After all, not even the royal dragon clans could do anything about it. I'm serious. Not only that, but the Dragon Ancestor, who was thought to have died long ago, also made an appearance. Though, he was in the form of an avatar, so something might happen to his physical body. The Dragon Ancestor is back? We'd just received news of Dragon Goddess Yu's return. What in heaven's name is happening in the 9 heavens? News of the Dragon Ancestor's appearance sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout the 9 heavens, far greater than those caused by the mention of Dragon Goddess Yao, primarily because his name carried even greater fame and influence. Unlike the Great One, who lived a selfish life, and Dragon Goddess Yao, who lived a secluded one, the Dragon Ancestor was the only one who communicated with and offered assistance to the other dragon clans. To many dragon clans, he was regarded as their forefather, the true dragon of origin. Beyond that, the Dragon Ancestor had established his own lineage, one that continues to reign as the foremost dragon clan in all of the 9 heavens. His influence was nothing short of unfathomable. Upon hearing of the Dragon Ancestor's return and his words to find him, even though they were meant for the Great One, the 10 royal dragon clans wasted no time, dispatching their armies across the 9 heavens in a relentless search for his whereabouts. Naturally, the Celestial Emperor became even more cautious when he received this news. Meanwhile, while the entire world was in an uproar, Yuan continued to spend his time with his own people, especially his partners, spending most of his time in the bedroom with them. A month passed since his meeting with Senior Bai. A familiar figure appeared at the super-perfect physique tempering sect. It was none other than Shi Meili. Sister Meili. Feng Yuxiang was very happy to see her. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry it took this long for me to come here. I had to travel the 7th heaven without using any teleportation formations, which took a while. She apologized. Are you okay? I hear you were in the fight with Heaven's Mandate, Yuan asked her. She nodded, thankfully. If it weren't for Yin and Yang, I would have definitely died that day, she sighed. What about Dongyi? Do you know where he's at? He then asked. We went our separate ways once I was close enough to you guys. Unfortunately, he didn't tell me anything before leaving. That's fine. He's a crafty and cautious person. He'll return to us soon. With Shi Meili's return, the others began catching up with her. By the way, did you hear? The Great One attacked the Dragon's Spiral Mountain after the Celestial Emperor, and the Dragon Ancestor showed up to stop him. Shi Meili revealed what she heard during her journey. What? The Dragon Ancestor? Yuan's eyes widened at this information. Yes, but from what I heard, it was just his avatar, so he didn't appear in the flesh. Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, either he was too far away, so he sent his avatar, or something happened to his physical body. Shi Meili nodded and added, he also told the Great One to find him. However, it could just be a stalling tactic. Maybe Yao knows something. I will ask her later, said Yuan. Okay. And shortly after Shi Meili's appearance, Kellen emerged from his seclusion. Though his cultivation remained the same, his aura had changed drastically since his seclusion. Yuan. Let's fight again. The first thing he did after coming out of seclusion was ask for a fight. Sure. Yuan immediately accepted since he was also itching for a fight after spending so much time in the bedroom. Yuan and Kellen met up at the White Training Ground the following day. The others also showed up to spectate. Although I lost to you last time, I have a good feeling the results will be different this time, Kellen proudly declared as they stood a dozen meters away from each other. Yuan smiled and said, you'd better have improved drastically after learning such a precious technique. Kellen fell silent for a moment. Then, with a solemn expression, he said, I know I shouldn't pry, but my curiosity won't let me stay quiet. Where in heaven's name did you obtain this technique, which was believed to be lost to time itself? He quickly added, of course, you don't have to answer it. I just wanted to get the question off my chest. Yuan then said, I acquired it from the Nameless Emperor's tomb. The Nameless Emperor's tomb. To think such a precious treasure has been hiding there for this long. It really makes one wonder what else is hidden in that death trap. Kellen had visited the Nameless Emperor's tomb more than once, but each venture yielded nothing of true value. After barely escaping with his life during his last expedition, he swore never to return, as the risk simply outweighed the rewards. However, upon learning that Yuan had acquired such a priceless technique from that very place, doubt crept into his conviction, and he began to reconsider. Alright, enough yapping from me. Let me show you how far I've come with the Great Mammoth Body Refinement Technique. Kellen's aura erupted as his body began to swell, muscles bulging and bones creaking, growing taller and bigger until he resembled that of a true giant. Chapter 2011 Referral. Chapter 2011 Referral. Though his size paled in comparison to Coolest during his reign as the Giant Emperor, Kellen had reached a level of mastery that allowed him to amplify both his size and strength in just a few short months, something that required geniuses decades to achieve during the primordial era. Come. When Yuan beckoned him, Kellen charged like a sumo wrestler, each thunderous step shaking the ground beneath him. Just like before, Yuan met him head-on, unarmed and relying solely on his body. Wanting to test the limit of his new technique, Kellen only used his physique and nothing else. He figured he would be able to rival Yuan with his new technique somehow. Unfortunately for him, it didn't take long for Kellen to return to reality. Fuck. It's only been a few months, but his physique has gotten even stronger. Kellen quickly realized that he wasn't the only one who had grown stronger during the last few months. Of course, Yuan didn't do any real training, and the only exercise he did was in the bedroom with his partners and a few light spars with the others. However, his soul and body were still in the process of merging, so he was constantly getting stronger without needing to do anything, much like Feng Yuxiang's situation. Yuan smiled and said, You may have learned a new technique, but you still haven't learned your lesson. What? What lesson? Kellen frowned. To never underestimate me. Yuan laughed out loud as he began pushing Kellen back despite the difference in their size. Also, have you already forgotten how you acquired the technique? A profound smile appeared on Yuan's face as his body suddenly began growing, quickly reaching Kellen's size. Why you? Though he knew he shouldn't be surprised, after all, he had learned the technique from Yuan, Kellen still couldn't help but be flabbergasted after seeing Yuan use the Great Mammoth Body Refinement Technique. However, Yuan didn't remain in his giant form for long and said, Though I can use the technique, I don't like increasing my size to make myself an easier target, and it hinders my mobility, too. Of course, the biggest reason why Yuan stopped using the Great Mammoth Body Refinement Technique was simply because he didn't need it. What's wrong? Are you done already? Yuan asked when Kellen stopped moving and stood still like an iron statue. As you wish. Kellen shouted before he resumed his assault. Since he couldn't defeat Yuan with the Great Mammoth Body Refinement Technique alone, he began using his martial techniques. Eventually, he started using his Cultivation and Immortal Qi. Yet, the results remained the same, and Yuan continued to push him back. However, despite how badly he was still losing to Yuan, Kellen refused to use Celestial Qi. It was the one thing he swore he wouldn't use unless Yuan could use Celestial Qi, as it would be too unfair. Their sparring lasted for nearly an entire week until Kellen was forced to stop because he received a certain message. Okay, let's stop here, Kellen suddenly said. Senior Bai has contacted me, saying that your referral is ready, whatever that means. I was also summoned by Celestial Overlord Su. Oh, I'm going to train at the Holy Sword Temple, Yuan explained. Did you just say the Holy Sword Temple? But you're still immortal. So what? One's sword understanding has nothing to do with their cultivation. Theoretically, a mortal can use Supreme Sword Aura. Yeah, there's no way. Kellen shook his head. You may be a monster, but even you cannot learn Supreme Sword Aura at your age. Wanna bet? Yuan said with a smile. Kellen instantly hesitated despite his earlier confidence. No. I'm fine. What a pity. I was going to bet another lost technique compatible with your giant bloodline. Yuan shrugged. What? Kellen exclaimed. Is that true? It doesn't matter anymore since you don't want to bet. I'll bet. Kellen hastily changed his mind. He continued, what do you want? If that technique is as valuable as the Great Mammoth Body Refinement Technique, I don't think I have anything I can use to bet. If I win, you'll let me take a look at your treasury and pick any one treasure I want. How about it? Are you sure? I may own a sect, but my treasury is quite lackluster. You will definitely be disappointed, he said. That's up for me to decide. All right. If that's what you want, don't complain afterward, not that you'll win. Also, it'll give you 100 years to train at the Holy Sword Temple. Yuan raised his eyebrows. 100 years? You're being too generous. You might as well give me the treasure now. Kellen frowned and said, then 10 years. You have 10 years to learn Supreme Sword Aura. Sure. Yuan nodded. Kellen extended his hand and said, let's shake on it. After shaking on it, they left the training grounds and made their way to the myriad of techniques. The others stayed back so they wouldn't end up crowding the place. When they arrived at the myriad of techniques, it wasn't just Senior Bai present, but Su Jiechi as well. It's been a while, Sister Su. However, Su Jiechi didn't respond. She simply stared at him with wide eyes, frozen in place. Although she had long believed Yuan to be the reincarnation of the Celestial Overlord's founder, seeing him fully grown left her breathless, and her memories of the founder were forcefully resurfaced. However, she quickly snapped out of it and said, sorry, but you look just like the Celestial Overlord's founder. If I had seen you outside, would have definitely mistaken you for him. She swiftly reached into her spatial ring and retrieved a crimson, sword-shaped badge, its surface etched with ancient symbols. Holding it with both hands, she offered it to him. This is your referral, she said. Present it to the masters of the Holy Sword Temple, and they will allow you to enter. Thank you. Yuan accepted the badge and inspected it with interest. Chapter 2012, Grand Sword Crater. Chapter 2012, Grand Sword Crater, when will you head to the Holy Sword Temple? Su Jiechi asked Yuan shortly after giving him the sword-shaped badge. I'll have to figure out how to get there first, he said. Though had been to the Holy Sword Temple before as Tian Xian, he couldn't recall how to get there. Only the Holy Sword Clan, who owns the place, can bring you to the Holy Sword Temple, Su Jiechi explained. So I have to contact the Holy Sword Clan, huh? Where do I find them? While their main headquarters is in the 9th heaven, they also have a branch in the 7th and 8th heaven. You can find them at the Grand Sword Crater. The Grand Sword Crater, right? I'll go find them as soon as possible. Good luck. The Holy Sword Clan is known for being eccentric, so try not to cause any trouble. They're also a top 20 faction with the most sword masters in the world, said Senior Bai. No promises, Yuan said with a playful smile. Yuan left shortly after, leaving Kellen behind. Once Yuan was gone, Su Jiechi turned her attention to Kellen. Now then. Commander Kellen. Why yes. Kellen subconsciously straightened his back after being called. I'm pretty sure I instructed you to notify me immediately when Yuan returns. Yet, you ignored my order and went straight to seclusion after his return. What do you have to say about that? She narrowed her gaze at him. Kellen lowered his head and apologized, I'm sorry. I got too excited when he gave me a technique. A technique? Senior Bai and Su Jiechi raised their eyebrows. Kellen was extremely picky when it came to learning new techniques, so it was pretty surprising to hear that he'd gotten so excited about a technique that he forgot about his mission. Though they were intrigued by the technique, they didn't force Kellen to reveal it since that was his private business with Yuan. "I'll let you go with a warning this time," Su Jiqi said. "Thank you, Celestial Overlord." After returning to the sect, Yuan explained the situation to the others. "So you'll be leaving again soon, huh?" Chu Liuxiang sighed. Though she knew he would eventually leave again, it didn't make her feel better when that time finally arrived. "I won't be leaving immediately. I promised Ro that I'd let her know before I leave, so I'll stay here until our next meeting," said Yuan. Thus, Yuan spent his remaining time in the sect with them until it was time for his meeting with Ro. At the myriad of techniques, Yuan announced his next destination to Ro and the others at the end of their meeting. "How long do you think you'll be gone this time?" Ro asked. "It's hard to say, but it'll definitely be at least a few years." "I see." Ro lowered her head for a moment, but she quickly raised her head again and spoke with a calm smile, "Be safe, brother. The same goes for you." Ro went to embrace him the next moment. "See you later." After leaving the myriad of techniques, Yuan immediately began preparing to head to the Holy Sword Temple. "Since I cannot enter your Dantian like the others, I'll stay here and train with the others," she merely said to Yuan before he left. Yuan nodded. After saying his goodbyes with the others, Yuan left the super-perfect physique tempering sect and made his way toward the Grand Sword Crater. Unfortunately, there was no teleportation device near his destination, so he could only teleport to the nearest place and travel from there. After emerging from the teleportation device, Yuan wasted no time and used Feng Yuxiang's flying treasure to travel. 3 months later, Yuan arrived at his destination. "This is the Grand Sword Crater," Feng Yuxiang murmured, her voice filled with awe as her gaze swept across the horizon. True to its name, the Grand Sword Crater was a monumental sight, a single, flawless gash carved into the land, stretching thousands of miles in length and plunging deep into the earth like a wound left by a heavenly blade. Though the landscape resembled the aftermath of a cataclysmic battle, the vast fissure was far from abandoned, with countless swordmasters moving busily around and within its depths. Legend has it that this colossal fissure was carved by a sword emperor with a single strike. Now, swordmasters from across the world gather here, hoping to glean insight from the remnants of his might and deepen their own understanding of the sword. Of course, not every swordmaster came here in pursuit of insight. In truth, the majority sought to attract the attention of the Holy Sword Clan, who frequented the crater in search of talented swordmasters to recruit for their faction. To draw the attention of the Holy Sword Clan, many swordmasters would periodically release their sword aura, feigning moments of insight, while others openly practiced their sword techniques in hopes of being noticed. "What a bunch of weirdos," Feng Yuxiang remarked when she saw the odd scene before her. Some time later, Yuan began wandering the Grand Sword Crater in search of the Holy Sword Clan. White and golden robes. Yuan occasionally muttered to himself as he used divine sense to quickly scout the area without stopping. Several days later, Yuan came to a stop when he finally found someone who looked to be from the Holy Sword Clan. He focused his divine sense on a bald old man clad in elegant white and gold robes adorned with intricate sword engravings. The old man was surrounded by sword masters, yet his gaze was fixed on a lone youth quietly cultivating before him, exuding a decent amount of enhanced sword aura. Not bad at all." The old man nodded in acknowledgement. Seeing this, envy flickered in the eyes of the surrounding sword masters, each secretly wishing it was their sword aura that had captured the old man's attention. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2013, Holy Sword Clan. Chapter 2013, Holy Sword Clan. When Yuan saw the situation, he decided not to interrupt but to spectate instead. A few minutes later, the young man who'd caught the attention of the old man from the Holy Sword Clan opened his eyes and stood up, seemingly unaware of the elder's presence. The old man cleared his throat loudly to announce his presence before speaking. "Young man, what's your name?" The young man was startled momentarily, but he quickly recovered when he saw the old man's white and golden robes. Then, he hastily lowered his body and bowed. "This junior is called Shu Ling. I apologize for not noticing you earlier, senior." The old man smiled and said, "It's my fault for sneaking up on you. Anyway, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?" "This junior is currently 3,291 years old," the young man responded. The surrounding swordmasters expressed surprise after hearing the young man's response. "So you've achieved enhanced sword aura in under 5,000 years. Very impressive indeed. Do you currently have a teacher?" the old man continued to ask, almost like he was giving a job interview. "No, I do not, but I did spend 1,000 years at the Gleaming Sword sect." The old man nodded before retrieving what looked like a slab of metal and said, "If you can leave even the slightest scratch on this plate using your enhanced sword aura, they'll recruit you into the Holy Sword Clan." Chu Ling swallowed nervously at the opportunity before him. The Holy Sword Clan was home to 3 sword emperors. Joining them was a dream pursued by countless sword masters. "Are you willing to accept this challenge?" the old man asked. "I am willing." Chu Ling immediately responded. The old man nodded and placed the medal on the ground. "Whenever you are ready," he said. Chu Ling retrieved his sword and took a moment to prepare himself. Then, everyone watched as Chu Ling's body surged with enhanced sword aura, and he struck the metal plate with a resounding clang that echoed through the crater. The spectators anticipated Chu Ling to leave a mark on the metal plate, but to their shock, he was suddenly hurled backward like a rag doll. Before anyone could make sense of what had just happened, a cold, mocking laughter echoed through the air. All eyes turned toward the old man, who was now laughing hysterically, as though he had just witnessed the most absurd joke in the world. What is going on?" Chu Ling muttered in a daze as he slowly got back to his feet. The old man responded, "That was the best you could do with that level of enhanced sword aura? What a waste of talents." "What's happening, young master?" Feng Yuxiang asked, as she was just as confused as the others. Yuan calmly explained, "While his enhanced sword aura is indeed commendable, he has no idea how to wield it. It's like handing a divine blade to a child, powerful, yet utterly wasted." "I didn't know you needed to know how to use sword aura," Feng Yuxiang remarked. "While weapon aura is inherently powerful and can be used as is, you still need to learn to control it to utilize its full potential. It's like comparing a sharp knife with a dull knife." The old man approached Chu Ling and shook his head, "Sorry, but it looks like you didn't pass the test. Please give me one more chance. I will do it properly this time." Chu Ling fell to his knees and begged. The old man narrowed his eyes and sneered in disdain, "Another chance? Do you know how many people here would kill for a first chance? You were given a chance, but you squandered it." Without giving Chu Ling another look, the old man turned around and walked away, leaving him devastated. However, before the old man could get too far, Yuan descended right before him, blocking his path. The old man halted his movements and stared at Yuan with a somewhat surprised face. Had been wandering the Grand Sword Crater for many years, but nobody had so boldly stood in his path before. "Do you think I can give it a go?" Yuan asked. "What?" The old man frowned. "That metal slab. I want to try striking it with my sword aura," he clarified. "I don't know if you're acting on boldness or pure stupidity, but I will give you a chance to walk away with your life." Yuan didn't say anything, but he exuded some of his sword aura. It wasn't his enhanced sword aura, but just his ordinary sword aura. The old man's eyes widened after sensing Yuan's ordinary sword aura, even doubting his own eyes for a second. His ordinary sword aura feels as powerful as the last guy's enhanced sword aura. But how is that possible? He cried inwardly, not daring to believe what he was sensing. In order to confirm the phenomenon before him, the old man retrieved the metal slab and tossed it on the ground. "Go ahead." Without saying a word, Yuan retrieved a random sword from his spatial ring and swung it at the metal slab. The people around them expected to hear a loud clanging sound like usual, but to their puzzlement, Yuan's strike didn't make even the slightest sound. Did he miss? They wondered out loud as their eyes shifted to the metal slab on the ground. No way. Despite staring at the object with their own eyes, nobody there dared to believe what they were witnessing. This is. The old man's voice trembled as he stared at the metal slab lying on the ground, now cleanly split in two. It's not as durable as I thought it would be. Yuan muttered. The old man's body shook. Then, without warning, he lunged forward and grabbed both of Yuan's arms. You must join our Holy Sword clan, he declared. However, Yuan remained calm and said, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not trying to join the Holy Sword clan. What? It wasn't just the old man, everyone present wore the same stunned expression after hearing Yuan's words, their minds struggling to grasp such nonsense. Chapter 2014, Holy Sword Clan, 2. Chapter 2014, Holy Sword Clan, 2. After a moment of silence, the old man cleared his throat and spoke in a forceful tone, I must have misheard you just now. Can you repeat what you said? I said that I am not interested in joining the Holy Sword Clan, Yuan calmly repeated, shocking everyone there for a second time. Blasphemy. If you're not interested in joining the Holy Sword Clan, why did you even bother with the metal plate? Are you messing with me? The old man exclaimed, his face flushed in redness. However, he didn't give up and continued trying to recruit Yuan. The Holy Sword Clan is the #1 faction for sword masters in the 9 heavens. If you wish to become a sword emperor, your best chance lies with us. We not only house 3 sword emperors, but the majority of sword emperors in history have hailed from our clan, the old man proclaimed, his tone filled with pride as he tried to sway Yuan's decision. I'll think about it after I finish training at the Holy Sword Temple, Yuan calmly responded. What? The Holy Sword Temple? The old man wore a dumbfounded expression on his face, but before he could speak further, Yuan retrieved the sword-shaped badge from his spatial ring and showed it off. This is my actual reason for approaching you, he said. That's the Holy Sword emblem. Where did you get that from? The old man exclaimed. Does it matter where? Of course, it does. How do I know that you didn't steal it or find it by chance? Yuan didn't argue further and showed the old man his faction symbol. I got it from someone in my faction. Celestial overlords. The old man and those around him sucked in a breath of cold breath after seeing his faction symbol. All right, come with me. I'll take you to our headquarters to speak with the elders. Yuan nodded and silently followed the old man into the depths of the Grand Sword Crater. After descending to the bottom of the massive fissure, they proceeded northward without pause. Though the number of sword masters within the Grand Sword Crater wasn't as overwhelming as outside, their presence was still significant, and Yuan couldn't go more than a few minutes without witnessing one practicing their sword techniques. After several days of travel and passing by numerous members of the Holy Sword Clan, they finally arrived at the clan's headquarters, located in the widest expanse of the Grand Sword Crater. Sandwiched between 2 colossal walls of earth stood several sword-shaped buildings, each varying in height but radiating the same grand presence. The old man brought Yuan to the tallest building and then had him wait inside one of the guest rooms. Wait here while I bring one of our elders here, said the old man before walking out and closing the door. However, Yuan could tell that the old man didn't leave and remained outside for some reason. A few moments later, the door opened, and the old man walked back inside. My name is Li Bowen, the 4th elder of the Holy Sword Clan, he introduced himself. The old man's unusual actions left Yuan speechless. Li Bowen smiled and said, There's no need for the suspicious looks. I really am an elder. He then took a seat right in front of Yuan and continued, All right, let's get straight to the topic. The Holy Sword Temple. Yuan quietly nodded. Although you have the Holy Sword emblem, that is only one of the requirements to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Is that your true cultivation? Li Bowen asked. Yes, it is. In all my years at the Holy Sword Clan, I have never heard of a mortal asking to enter the Holy Sword Temple, much less stand before one myself. Do you even know what you're getting yourself into? As long as I can learn Supreme Sword Aura, I don't care. Li Bowen narrowed his eyes and said, The Holy Sword Temple may serve as a training ground, but it is a perilous place where even immortals can easily lose their life, much less a mortal like you. I'm sure you already know that, so I won't waste my breath trying to change your mind. However, I still have to test your qualifications. How will you do that? Yuan asked. It's very simple and straightforward. I just need to test your enhanced sword aura. Sounds good. Then follow me. The next moment, they left the room, and Li Bowen led Yuan to another building. Within it lay a vast training ground, where several sword masters were striking a towering wall with their enhanced sword aura. Naturally, the wall was forged from a special material, similar to the metal slab Yuan had effortlessly split in two, but also vastly different at the same time. The sword masters in the room struck the wall with meticulously controlled enhanced sword aura and had been doing so for several hours now, yet not a single one of them managed to leave even the faintest scratch. This wall is forged from a unique material with unparalleled resistance to slashing attacks. Don't even think about comparing it to the metal slab you cut through a few days ago. This is at least 1,000 times more durable, Li Bowen explained with a somewhat proud look on his face. So, how deep does the cut need to be for me to qualify? Yuan asked. Li Bowen smiled and replied, 1 inch. If you can somehow manage to leave a cut that deep on this wall, they'll personally take you to the Holy Sword Temple. But there's a condition: you can only use a spirit-grade sword and rely solely on your enhanced sword aura. No martial techniques, no powerful treasures. Fair enough. Li Bowen retrieved an ordinary spirit-grade sword that one could purchase from anywhere and handed it to Yuan. Whenever you're, Li Bowen abruptly paused mid-sentence, his expression tightening. Sensing several unfamiliar auras entering the building, he turned toward the entrance, and his eyes widened in disbelief after seeing their faces. What are they doing here? He muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with shock and unease. Meanwhile, those training at the wall halted their training and quietly bowed to the group. Yuan followed Li Bowen's gaze toward the group that had just stepped into the building. There were 6 individuals in total, but all eyes were naturally drawn to the 2 at the front, a strikingly beautiful young woman and a handsome young man, both adorned in the distinguished robes of the Holy Sword clan. I'll be back. Don't do anything until then, Li Bowen said to Yuan before approaching the group. Greetings, Holy Sword Maiden, Holy Sword King, and everyone else. Elderly, it's been a while, said the handsome man, who was known as the Holy Sword King within the Holy Sword clan. Yes, it's been around 150 years. What brought you guys to the 7th heaven? The Sword Emperor qualifications, of course. I know there are still a few years before it begins, but we decided to come down earlier, he explained. I see. Do you mind if we use the training grounds for a bit? The Holy Sword Maiden suddenly said. Of course not, but at your level. We won't be the ones to use it, she elaborated, looking at the other 4 behind her. Oh, I see. In any case, feel free to use it. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. Thank you. Li Bowen returned to Yuan shortly after and said to him, sorry, but we'll have to do your qualifications another time. But it won't even take a minute. I just need to hit the wall once, Yuan said. Li Bowen responded with voice transmission, I know, but this isn't about that. Do you see that beautiful woman with silver hair and that young man with the short red hair? They're the Holy Sword Maiden and the Holy Sword King. Their status within the Holy Sword clan is only below the Sword Emperors. While the Holy Sword Maiden might not mind your presence, the Holy Sword King is known for being easily irritable. I am doing this for your own good. If you offend them, you can kiss your chance to enter the Holy Sword Temple, even with a referral. Don't worry, I doubt they'll stay for too long. Yuan found it a pain in the ass, but had rather wait a few days, even weeks, if it meant not causing any unnecessary trouble. I don't mind waiting a little, he said. Thank you for your understanding. You can stay in one of our guest rooms for now, Li Bowen said. The next moment, Yuan followed Li Bowen to the exit. Who's that? The Holy Sword Maiden asked one of the sword masters who had been training there before their arrival. I'm not sure. He arrived only a few moments earlier than you guys, but I think he was trying to qualify for the Holy Sword Temple. The Holy Sword King laughed and said, there's no way. That guy was a mortal. Oh, then I don't know. Sorry. It's fine. The Holy Sword Maiden shook her head. After leaving the training ground, Li Bowen brought Yuan to his guest room. You can stay here for now. I'll contact you when they are finished with the place, which shouldn't take too long. Once Li Bowen left and he was alone, Yuan sat on the ground and closed his eyes. I might as well use this time to perfect my enhanced sword aura, he thought inwardly before immersing himself in Tianzin's memories. Chapter 2015, Holy Sword Clan, 3. Chapter 2015, Holy Sword Clan, 3. Unlike his predecessors, Xianxia was unique in the sense that he was born with all of his previous lives' memories intact. This gave him an unfathomable advantage, allowing him to train with all of his previous knowledge since the day he was born. Because of this, Xianxia was always considered a prodigy no matter where he went. Moreover, not only was Xianxia born with all of his memories, but he also came from a renowned background, one that was known for creating many powerful swordmasters. One could consider Xianxia being born with a diamond spoon in his mouth. Yet, despite this, he did not rely on his family even in the slightest and left home at a young age to travel the 9 heavens. During his journey, Xianxia quickly gained fame as an undefeated and mysterious warrior, his identity shrouded in mystery beneath the mask he always wore. He encountered Jinxi early in his journey. After being defeated by him, she chose to follow him to get stronger, whether he liked it or not. Although he ignored her in the beginning, they eventually became something akin to master and disciple. Of course, Xianxia never admitted that he was teaching her, only giving her cryptic advice. It didn't take long for Jinxi to develop feelings for Xianxia, and in time, he began to feel the same. Yet, neither of them ever voiced their hearts. Though Jinxi's affection often showed in her actions, quite obvious at times, she never found the courage to confess. As for Xianxia, while he was aware of Jinxi's feelings, he chose to feign ignorance. Together, they honed their swordsmanship. While Jinxi struggled to achieve enhanced sword aura, Xianxia had long mastered enhanced sword aura and was already looking to reach the next realm, the level of supreme sword aura. As Yuan recalled his experiences as Xianxia, enhanced sword aura naturally emanated from his body. Since the strength of one's weapon aura stems primarily from comprehension, his enhanced sword aura became sharper and toward perfection at an unfathomable rate. In the blink of an eye, a whole month has passed since Yuan arrived at the Holy Sword Clan. Knock knock. Yuan opened his eyes when someone suddenly knocked on the door. About time, he sighed out loud, assuming Li Bowen had finally arrived to inform him that the training ground was ready. He went to open the door a moment later, only to be surprised that it wasn't Li Bowen who'd knocked on the door. How can I help you?" Yuan asked the beautiful young woman standing outside his door. This woman had long silver hair and red eyes that glowed faintly. Unexpectedly, it was the Holy Sword Maiden. The Holy Sword Maiden didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced into his room to confirm he was alone. Then, with a slightly puzzled expression, she said, "I happened to be passing by when I sensed enhanced sword aura coming from this room. I may be mistaken, but was that you?" The Holy Sword Maiden spoke with a tone of disbelief. The enhanced sword aura she had sensed was so powerful, it could only be compared to that of a sword emperor, yet the man before her was clearly just a mortal. "Yes, it was mine. I was training. Sorry, I didn't realize it was leaking outside. I hope that didn't bother you." "How," she muttered in a low voice before asking in a loud and clear voice, "how did you achieve that level of enhanced sword aura?" "I have already reached the level of supreme sword aura, but my enhanced sword aura couldn't be compared to it." "Can you also use supreme sword aura?" "No, I can't." "That doesn't make any sense. Can you explain how you did it?" "I don't know what to tell you. The strength of one's weapon aura is based on their understanding, so." The Holy Sword Maiden frowned slightly and said, "Are you saying that you, who hasn't even learned supreme sword aura, somehow has a better understanding than I?" "Well, each level of sword aura carries its own depth of understanding," Yuan said. "So it's possible for someone to grasp one level more profoundly than another." "I know that. But it still doesn't make sense. How can a mortal understand more than I, who is at the God Ascension realm?" Yuan didn't know what else to say, but he had a feeling that he'd get into trouble soon. "Come with me," she suddenly said. "I really shouldn't. I was told to stay here by elderly," Yuan said. "Do you know who I am?" she then asked. He nodded and answered, "You're the Holy Sword Maiden, right?" "That's right, and my authority within the Holy Sword clan is only second to the Sword Emperor's. Nothing will happen to you if you come with me." "I promise," she said. "Okay." Yuan responded with a stiff smile. It wasn't Li Bowen he was concerned about. However, he couldn't tell her that he was worried about getting involved with her, as that would definitely offend her. Without saying another word, the Holy Sword Maiden turned around and began walking away. Seeing this, Yuan could only sigh inwardly and follow her. They arrived at their destination a few minutes later. Unexpectedly, the Holy Sword Maiden brought him to the building with the metal wall. However, the place was empty. Upon their arrival, the Holy Sword Maiden silently approached the wall, retrieving one of the spirit-grade swords hanging nearby. She then stepped forward, positioning herself before the metal wall. After drawing a steady breath, she activated her enhanced sword aura. In one graceful, fluid motion, she swung the sword, unleashing a streak of shimmering aura that sliced through the air toward the wall. When her enhanced sword aura struck the wall, it carved a 6-inch deep gash into the metal, leaving a clear mark that stood out amid the countless faint scratches left by others. Before Yuan could even say anything, the Holy Sword Maiden tossed her sword at him and said, "Your turn." Chapter 2016, Holy Sword Clan, 4. Chapter 2016, Holy Sword Clan, 4. Before I strike at the wall, do you mind calling elderly here? Yuan asked after catching the spirit-grade sword. "Why? Are you worried that I might do something to you?" The Holy Sword Maiden spoke with a frown. "No, that's not it. I just don't want to do this again later." "Why would you?" The Holy Sword Maiden abruptly halted her sentence when she recalled something that was mentioned before. So it was true. "You're here to qualify for the Holy Sword Temple," she said. Yuan nodded, "That's right. In that case, there's no need to trouble elderly. I can verify it myself." "Go ahead, whenever you're ready," she said, urging him to proceed. "All right." Yuan approached the metal wall, took a deep breath, and fell silent. The next moment, enhanced sword aura surged from his body before enveloping the sword. The Holy Sword Maiden remained silent, but her fists were tightly clenched. From a single glance, she could tell that his enhanced sword aura far surpassed hers. Yet, she couldn't fathom just how vast that difference was. Once he was ready, Yuan flicked his arm with lightning speed. In that instant, the sword in his grasp flickered like a phantom. In the moments that followed, Yuan's enhanced sword aura struck the 6-inch gash left by the Holy Sword Maiden. Not only did it erase her mark entirely, but it even pierced straight through the wall itself, leaving a clean hole in its wake. No way. The Holy Sword Maiden's legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed onto her buttocks with a soft thud, her eyes wide with disbelief. Yuan's enhanced sword aura hadn't merely exceeded her expectations, it likely surpassed even that of the Sword Emperors within the Holy Sword Clan. Sorry, but I didn't mean to destroy the wall," Yuan muttered awkwardly, scratching his head. Elderly made it sound indestructible, after all. However, the Holy Sword Maiden was too shocked to even respond, and she merely continued staring at the hole with a dazed face. Seeing her in a daze, Yuan could only wait patiently for her to return to reality. However, his expression subtly shifted when he sensed several powerful presences drawing near. It was likely the Holy Sword King and the others. Even without being told, Yuan understood how terrible the situation appeared. He could already picture himself trying to explain the situation to them, only for things to worsen. Hell, he could even foresee the Holy Sword King picking a fight with him over this. With no other choice, Yuan hastily placed the spirit-grade sword on the ground beside the Holy Sword Maiden, then turned around and exited through the hole head created. Seeing this, the Holy Sword Maiden finally snapped out of her daze. However, Yuan had already left, and before she could give chase, the Holy Sword King and the others entered the building. What the hell happened here? The Holy Sword King exclaimed as his gaze fell upon the gaping hole in the wall. His first instinct was to assume the Holy Sword Maiden was responsible, yet he couldn't fathom why she'd do such a thing. However, before he could ask her anything, the Holy Sword Maiden stood up and ran toward the hole in the wall. Wait! Where are you going? The Holy Sword King immediately chased after her. With the Holy Sword King close behind, the Holy Sword Maiden rushed after Yuan. However, even with her divine sense enveloping the entire area, she couldn't detect his presence. Why can't I find him? Don't tell me he already left this place. But there's no way he could have gone that far in such a short time. Of course, Yuan was still within the Holy Sword clan's territory. The reason the Holy Sword Maiden couldn't find him was because he was concealing his presence with Shadow Veil. Some time later, after giving up on finding Yuan, the Holy Sword Maiden went to find Li Bowen instead. That young man who came to qualify for the Holy Sword Temple, who is he? She questioned him. Excuse me? Li Bowen wore a dumbfounded look on his face. He couldn't understand why the Holy Sword Maiden was suddenly looking for Yuan, who hadn't left the guest room for over a month. Just answer my question, she raised her voice, startling him and the Holy Sword King, who had never seen her so agitated before. Are you looking for that mortal from a month ago? The Holy Sword King finally recalled. Why? Did he do something to you? I'll find and skin that bastard. Why are you even here? This doesn't concern you. She interrupted him. But. Get out, she pointed toward the exit. Seeing how annoyed she was, the Holy Sword King reluctantly left the room. Once they were alone, the Holy Sword Maiden continued questioning Li Bowen. Tell me everything you know about that mortal with you a month ago, she demanded. Li Bowen swallowed nervously before responding. The only thing I know about him is that he's with the Celestial Overlords. What about his name? That's, It was at this moment that Li Bowen realized he'd never asked Yuan for his name. I'm sorry, but I never got the chance to ask for his name. He admitted a moment later. Can you tell me what this is all about? He then asked. The Holy Sword Maiden rubbed her eyes and sighed before explaining. He cut through the wall. What? Li Bowen raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner, unable to comprehend her words. The impenetrable sword wall. He cut through the entire thing with his sword aura. She repeated, this time with more detail. He what? Li Bowen exclaimed, his eyes as wide as saucers. Let me go see. Before the Holy Sword Maiden could respond, Li Bowen rushed to the training ground. The moment Li Bowen laid eyes on the gaping hole in the wall, his jaw nearly hit the ground in disbelief. After all, the only time he'd witnessed such devastation was from Supreme Sword Aura, yet Yuan couldn't possibly know it if he was seeking training at the Holy Sword Temple. When the Holy Sword Maiden caught up, he asked her, how did he achieve this? With enhanced sword aura, she responded, confirming his suspicions. Unsure of how to respond, Li Bowen quietly stood there, staring at the hole with a dazed face. Chapter 2017, Holy Sword Clan, 5. Chapter 2017, Holy Sword Clan, 5, Hey. The Holy Sword Maiden suddenly called out, snapping Li Bowen out of his daze. When he turned to look at her, she held a sword-shaped badge in front of her, seemingly offering it to him. This badge looked similar to the one in Yuan's possession, but it was golden in color and had more refined details. Li Bowen's eyes widened at the sight of this badge, but before he could say anything, the Holy Sword Maiden spoke. The mortal left before I could give this to him. If he returns, give it to him for me. I promise to verify his qualifications, after all. The sword badge was akin to a referral, but it came from none other than the Holy Sword Maiden, which guaranteed Yuan's admission to the Holy Sword Temple. Yes. Li Bowen accepted the badge with stiff movements. Even someone of his stature had never touched this object before. Wait. Did you say he'd left? Li Bowen suddenly asked. Yes, he left after destroying the wall. He probably thought he'd get in trouble or something. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that he's afraid of me. I see. Li Bowen remarked in a flat voice. He couldn't tell her that it was most likely due to what he told Yuan a month ago. Anyway, I'll be leaving now. If you ever find more about that mortal, let me know. We need him in the Holy Sword clan, said the Holy Sword Maiden. But he's already with the Celestial Overlords, Li Bowen reminded her. So what? As far as I am aware, the Celestial Overlords don't restrict their members to a single faction. And since there are no grievances between our faction, there's no reason he cannot join us as well. Most factions out there allow their members to join multiple factions to keep their numbers up, so it wasn't uncommon for someone to belong to multiple factions. Li Bowen could only silently nod his head. He recalled Yuan being at the lowest rank for the Celestial Overlords, so there was a good chance they could recruit him into the Holy Sword clan. Sometime later, the Holy Sword Maiden left the Holy Sword clan. The Holy Sword King and the others were puzzled by her abrupt departure, but they still left with her. Fuck, what am I supposed to do with this badge? If he doesn't return. Li Bowen muttered as he stared at the golden badge resting on his palm. However, he suddenly sensed a presence appear behind him like a ghost. When he turned around and saw Yuan standing behind him, Li Bowen nearly had a heart attack. Son of a bi. Sorry for startling you. You. I thought you had left. No, I only hid my presence since I didn't want to deal with the Holy Sword Maiden after what happened. I'm glad she left so quickly, said Yuan. Li Bowen rubbed his eyes and released a stressful sigh. I told you to stay away from them, but you went ahead and caused such a scene. Yuan shrugged. Don't make it sound like it was my fault that she dragged me out of my room and forced me to do her bidding. If I had refused, it would have definitely offended her. I am not blaming you. Li Bowen said, admitting that it wasn't his fault. In fact, I am quite thankful for what you did. Like you said, things could have turned out much worse, but it didn't. Hell, the Holy Sword Maiden even approved of you. Li Bowen extended his hand toward Yuan, showing the golden badge, and continued, she has granted you permission to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Thank you. Yuan accepted the badge. Then, he asked, about the wall, how much will the repairs cost? I'll pay for it. It'll cost a few 100 million spirit stones, but you don't need to worry about it. It's pretty worn out, and we've been wanting to replace it, but we got lazy. If you say so. Anyway, when do you want to head to the Holy Sword Temple? Can we go there now? Unfortunately, it'll take some time to prepare the transport, so the earliest you can go is 3 months. Then I'll leave as soon as possible. I understand. Oh, one more thing. How would you like to join the Holy Sword Temple? This isn't just my request, but also the Holy Sword Maiden's. But I am already part of the Celestial Overlords. The Celestial Overlords doesn't prevent its members from joining other factions. In fact, several of our members are also members of the Celestial Overlords. There's no downside to having more backers, either. Li Bowen's words made sense to Yuan. It was common for people to join multiple factions to expand their influence. After all, having the support of several powerful backers was always advantageous. However, Yuan didn't want to just join any faction. Can you give me some time to think about it? I would like to learn more about the Holy Sword clan before I decide, he said. Li Bowen's face immediately lit up with excitement. Of course. Though there's not much to see here since we're just a small branch location, I'll try my best to answer any questions that you may have. Sometime later, Li Bowen left to get the transportation ready. In the meantime, Yuan wandered their territory. However, just as Li Bowen had warned, there wasn't much to see, much less learn there. However, he did find a library that contained the history of the Holy Sword clan, and with nothing else better to do, he started reading it. After reading several scrolls, Yuan learned some peculiar information about the Holy Sword Temple. According to the Holy Sword clan, they weren't the first owners of the Holy Sword Temple, and they'd merely acquired it from its creator, the Exalted Blacksmith. However, Yuan couldn't recall creating it. Of course, he still lacked some of Tian Qiyuan's memories, mostly of his time after becoming the god of creation. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 2018, Entering the Starry Sky. Chapter 2018, Entering the Starry Sky. After spending a few days in the library, Yuan went back to his room, where he tried to learn Supreme Sword Aura. Despite having the understanding, memories, and experience of using Supreme Sword Aura as Tian Xian, Yuan couldn't use it for some reason, almost as if his attempt was being blocked by an unseen force. After failing several times, Yuan stopped trying and began focusing on his soul strength instead. Since there was no limit to how strong his soul strength could get, it was his current priority. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed since Yuan received permission to visit the Holy Sword Temple. Once the preparations were complete, Li Bowen notified Yuan and brought him outside, where a golden carriage awaited. Naturally, this was no ordinary carriage. It was a flying treasure crafted by the Holy Sword clan, reserved for journeys to the Holy Sword Temple. The carriage will take you to the Holy Sword Temple, which will take 2 months. Also, just in case you didn't know, you still have to pass a trial to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Right now, you only have permission to visit the place and partake in the trial, Li Bowen said. Yuan nodded. I am aware. All right. Whenever you're ready. Li Bowen opened the door and gestured for him to enter. The moment Yuan stepped into the carriage, he found himself in a surprisingly spacious room, as though had entered another world. High-grade flying treasures like the golden carriage were crafted with spatial techniques, allowing their interiors to be far larger than their outward appearance suggested. Good luck at the Holy Sword Temple, Li Bowen said before closing the door. The golden carriage departed soon after, ascending swiftly into the skies before piercing through the clouds and vanishing into the boundless void in the blink of an eye. Inside the room, Yuan approached the window and gazed outside. Beyond the glass stretched a vast expanse of darkness, illuminated by countless flickering stars of varying sizes. Lan Yingying emerged from Yuan's dantian to look at the starry sky since this was her first time traveling beyond the 9 heavens. So this is what the starry sky looks like up close. Lan Yingying muttered with a look of awe on her face. Feng Yuxiang and the others also appeared. I find it rather dull, Feng Yuxiang remarked. The place is mostly empty, and when you do find something, it's usually just useless rocks. That said, the starry sky holds some of the rarest and most precious treasures in the 9 heavens, so there's still reason to explore it. How does one explore the starry sky? Lan Yingying asked. Well, there are treasures out there that help you find other treasures. However, they are extremely rare and expensive. Other than that, I guess you'll just have to rely on your luck and wander the place until you find something. What if you get lost? It's hard to explain, but once you reach a certain cultivation, it's almost impossible to get lost even in the starry sky. You will instinctively know where you are and where to go. Of course, people still take precautions and have teleporting treasures just in case. Nobody is foolish enough to enter the starry sky without life-saving treasures either. Life-saving treasures? Is the starry sky that dangerous? Lan Yingying asked. Of course. With no rules in the starry sky and distances too vast to call for help, you can only rely on yourself, Feng Yuxiang said. So what happens if we encounter someone? Well, since we're in a flying treasure and won't be venturing too far away from the 9 heavens, even if we do encounter someone, it is very unlikely that anything will happen. We're also in the Holy Sword clan's signature carriage. I doubt anyone would be foolish enough to attack us. Yuan smiled and said, You'd be surprised at how many bold individuals are out there. Even if someone attacks us, we'll be fine since you're here, young master. Feng Yuxiang chuckled. However, Yuan shook his head and said, As long as they're not in the God Ascension realm, they'll be able to handle them. But you've already defeated several God Ascension realm cultivators, she said. No, I only destroyed their physical bodies, Yuan replied. Besides, God Ascension realm cultivators have restricted power within the 9 heavens, just as the lower heavens impose their own cultivation limits. However, that restriction will be lifted once they leave the 9 heavens. Really? I didn't know that God Ascension realm cultivators have their strength restricted in the 9 heavens. Lan Yingying said with a surprised look on her face. God Ascension realm cultivators possessed the strength to shatter stars with a mere clench of their fists. If they were free to wield such power within the 9 heavens, that world would have long since ceased to exist. I can only fight God Ascension realm cultivators in the 9 heavens. Once we leave, even I am powerless against them until I learn celestial qi, said Yuan. Is that so? Lan Yingying continued asking questions, her curiosity about the starry sky growing with each passing moment as she gazed out the window. It was as if she were instinctively drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. Time passed swiftly, and before they knew it, nearly 2 months had gone by. Hey. I think I see something. Lan Yingying, who had spent most of her time gazing at the void, suddenly said. What do you see? Feng Yuxiang asked as she sipped on her tea at the couch. Lan Yingying narrowed her eyes and murmured uncertainly, I think, it's some kind of serpent, a white serpent. What? Feng Yuxiang raised her eyebrows. And I think it's consuming stars. What? The moment Yuan heard this detail, he stopped cultivating at once and sprang to his feet, rushing to the window. And sure enough, when he looked outside, he saw a tiny, serpent-like entity drifting through the void. Wherever it passed, the flickering stars vanished, almost as if they were being devoured. It can't be. Yuan murmured in disbelief. Chapter 2019, White Serpent in the Starry Sky. Chapter 2019, White Serpent in the Starry Sky. Yuan could scarcely believe his eyes as he watched the white serpent drift through the starry sky, devouring stars in its wake. Xingrui. Yuan muttered this name. It was likely that this entity was the Eater of Stars, one of the 9 Divine Supreme, who had vanished since the Immortal Monarch's era. The evidence wasn't conclusive, but in Yuan's eyes, there was no doubt. After all, how many white serpents that could devour stars were out there? Xingrui. Isn't that one of the 9 Divine Supreme? Feng Yuxiang remarked when she heard this name. Yuan nodded, yes. According to Yao, she returned to the starry sky to consume stars after the Immortal Monarch's death. Feng Yuxiang set down her tea and walked to the window for a look herself, but by the time she arrived, the white serpent had already drifted so far into the void that it looked no more than a speck of white dust. She's so far away, Feng Yuxiang murmured. Hearing this, Yuan clenched his fists in frustration. Though they were fortunate to have glimpsed the Eater of Stars, that fortune was bittersweet, as there was no realistic way for them to pursue her. The flying treasure was on autopilot, and even if Yuan could redirect its course to pursue Xingrui, their chances of catching up were non-existent. After all, Xingrui was a colossal beast capable of devouring multiple stars in a single bite. For her to appear as nothing more than a speck of dust, she had to be light years away. Without the proper flying treasure and sufficient time, it was impossible to catch Xingrui. It'd be impossible to pursue Xingrui even if I were a God Ascension realm cultivator right now. If I really want to catch up to her, I'll need to master the power of the void, at least to the point where I can teleport vast distances. Just wait a little longer, Xingrui. I'll find you again, soon. Yuan swore inwardly as he stood by the window, silently watching the tiny white speck fade into the depths of the void. For the rest of their journey to the Holy Sword Temple, Yuan found himself reminiscing about his time with Xingrui. In the beginning, she had reminded him of Yingzi, aloof, curious, and utterly lacking in common sense. But as time passed, she grew more composed, and her loyalty to him deepened to unfathomable depths. Eventually, Yuan, we've arrived at the Holy Sword Temple, Lan Yingying said, pointing ahead at a massive floating island. At its center stood a towering, majestic structure that resembled a grand temple. The Holy Sword Temple radiated a brilliant golden light, piercing through the surrounding darkness like a divine treasure suspended in the void. The golden carriage descended onto the island, landing right in front of the temple gates. Lan Yingying and the others returned to Yuan's dantian before he left the carriage. Greetings. A middle-aged woman wearing golden robes greeted Yuan when he exited the carriage. Hello. I am the sixth holy sword of the Holy Sword Temple, but you may address me as the sixth elder. Can I see your referral? Yuan nodded and retrieved not just the crimson badge he received from Su Jiechi but also the golden badge from the Holy Sword Maiden, handing it to the sixth elder. This is... The sixth elder's eyes widened with surprise when she saw the golden badge. So you've received the Holy Sword Maiden's approval. I believe this is her first time handing out her badge to someone, revealed the sixth elder. Is that so? I feel honored. The sixth elder nodded and said, just so you know, even with the Holy Sword Maiden's approval, you must pass a trial before you can enter the Holy Sword Temple. I am aware. What kind of trial is it? The sixth elder turned to face a specific direction, where a colossal sword hovered silently above a circular platform, resembling that of an execution site. To enter the Holy Sword Temple, you must survive the Blade of Tribulation, a celestial-grade treasure imbued with enhanced sword chi and a hint of supreme sword aura, with nothing but your own sword chi. Even if you somehow manage to survive, it still counts as a fail if you allow the Blade of Tribulation to injure your body, explained the sixth elder. In other words, using nothing but my sword aura, I have to emerge unscathed, said Yuan. That is correct. This meant that Yuan couldn't exploit the trial with his regeneration abilities and had to rely solely on his enhanced sword aura. I'm curious, how many people die in this trial? Yuan asked. A cold smile tugged at the corners of the sixth elder's lips as she said, the Holy Sword Temple receives thousands of challengers each year, yet only 5% manage to pass its trial. In other words, for 95%, it becomes a graveyard. That said, only those who have yet to enter the God Ascension realm perish since they cannot live without a physical body. If I survive but fail the trial, can I try it again? Yuan then asked. Of course, but you'll have to wait 10 years before trying again, she said. All right. Let's get this over with. Yuan said as he approached the platform. Are you sure? Everyone is given a month to prepare, she stopped him. He nodded. I am sure. If you say so. The moment Yuan stepped onto the platform, an overwhelming pressure crashed down upon him, and that was merely the natural aura of the Blade of Tribulation. Yuan raised his head to gaze at the blade, a mysterious smile forming on his lips. The Holy Sword clan likely wouldn't believe him even if he told them, but this wasn't his first time seeing the Blade of Tribulation. After all, he was the one who forged it when he was the exalted blacksmith. In fact, the Blade of Tribulation was crafted during the God of Creation ceremony. Chapter 2020, Holy Sword Temple. Chapter 2020, Holy Sword Temple. Whenever you're ready to begin the trial, activate your sword aura and use it to protect your body, said the sixth elder after Yuan stepped onto the platform. The Blade of Tribulation won't attack unless it senses your sword aura. Yuan silently nodded in acknowledgement and took a moment to prepare himself. Then, without hesitation, he unleashed as much enhanced sword aura as he could muster. The sixth elder's eyes widened with awe when she sensed Yuan's enhanced sword aura. No wonder she gave him her sword badge. The sixth elder finally understood what caused the Holy Sword Maiden to approve of him. In response to Yuan's sword aura, the Blade of Tribulation began to tremble, then, within moments, it unleashed its own enhanced sword aura. And then, as if heralding an execution, the blade descended from the sky, hurling itself toward Yuan with terrifying speed. Since the trial required him to endure the attack using only his enhanced sword aura, Yuan concentrated solely on that. He remained motionless, calmly awaiting the blade's descent. Half a second later, the blade reached Yuan, colliding with his enhanced sword aura. Despite its powerful descent, the Blade of Tribulation came to an abrupt halt the moment its tip touched his aura, frozen in midair. But it didn't end there, and the Blade of Tribulation suddenly surged with an even greater wave of enhanced sword aura, this time laced with a faint trace of supreme sword aura. Yet, Yuan remained firm, his enhanced sword aura unwavering. How long do I have to resist this sword? Yuan turned to look at the sixth elder. When the Blade of Tribulation stops its attack, she responded. Even without waiting for the end results, the sixth elder could tell that Yuan was going to pass the trial with ease the moment she sensed his sword aura. His enhanced sword aura was the most powerful she had ever seen, and Shed met a lot of sword masters, including sword emperors. Sure enough, exactly 30 seconds after its descent, the Blade of Tribulation withdrew its enhanced sword aura and silently returned to its place in the sky. "Congratulations on passing the trial," said the sixth elder. "You are the first mortal in history to have ever succeeded, not that there were any mortals before you who'd attempted it." Yuan calmly walked off the platform and said, "So, when can I enter the Holy Sword Temple?" "Only one person is allowed inside the Holy Sword Temple at a time, and someone is currently training inside," she explained. "There's also a wait list, and..." She stopped there and retrieved a jade slip to look at the contents inside before continuing. "You are currently 149th on the list." Yuan's jaw dropped after hearing this. He was never told about a wait list, which could take years if not longer. Noticing his expression, the sixth elder explained, "There's no strict time limit, but once you step outside, your training is considered complete. Also, there's no opportunity to rest once you're inside, so most cultivators only remain in the temple for a few years at a time before coming out to recuperate." "That's too long. I don't have the time to wait for my turn. Is there nothing that can be done?" "Unfortunately, that's just how the Holy Sword Temple was set up. There's nothing we, the Holy Sword Clan, can do about it either. However, there is one way to move up the wait list." "How?" Yuan instantly inquired. "You can try swapping places with the next person on the wait list. It has happened before, but it's extremely rare and often involves some sort of payment." Yuan rubbed his eyes and muttered, "What a pain in the ass." Since most cultivators who trained at the Holy Sword Temple were immortals, waiting a few hundred years to enter one of the 9 heavens' most effective training grounds was a small price to pay. But Yuan didn't have that kind of time. The sixth elder then continued, "It just so happens that the person who is supposed to go next is already at the Holy Sword Temple. We can talk to them about a potential position swap, and if you want to increase your chances of even having a negotiation, you should make an offer." "Who is this individual?" "Knowing a bit more about them would help me prepare a suitable offer," Yuan said. "This person is the sect leader of the Sword Descending Pavilion. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what he wants since we don't like prying." "In that case, can you see if they're willing to negotiate?" "We can do that. Give me a few minutes." The sixth elder flew away the next moment. While she was away, Yuan pondered what he should do if the negotiations failed, if this sect leader even wanted to negotiate at all. "I really don't want to leave empty-handed after spending so much time and effort getting here, but there's really nothing I can do if I have to wait for my turn. It's not like I can force my way inside, either," he sighed out loud. The sixth elder returned about 15 minutes later, and before Yuan could even ask her about the negotiation, she silently shook her head. "I see." Yuan sighed. Was there truly nothing he could do but wait for his turn? After another sigh, Yuan spoke, "Do you think I can take a look at the Holy Sword Temple before I leave?" The sixth elder nodded, "If it's just looking around, there's no harm in that. Follow me." Yuan followed the sixth elder to the Holy Sword Temple, which was only a few minutes away. Once he was standing before the majestic Holy Sword Temple, a sudden wave of nostalgia surged within Yuan. "It's a pity, but it seems like I am not fated to train here today." A few moments later, Yuan turned around and began walking away. Rumble, however, before he could take even 2 steps, the ground began to tremble, prompting Yuan to turn around, just in time to see the doors of the Holy Sword Temple slowly begin to open. Chapter 2021, Holy Sword Temple, 2. Chapter 2021, Holy Sword Temple, 2, The door is opening. The sixth elder mumbled. However, she didn't think it had anything to do with Yuan and figured it was just a coincidence, that the person inside was finished with their training. In the very next moment, the sixth elder watched as someone emerged from the Holy Sword Temple. No, they were launched out, as if forcefully ejected. What the? The sixth elder followed the figure flying through the air with wide eyes. Fuck! The individual shouted as they steadied themselves after being thrown from the Holy Sword Temple. Once Yuan got a clear look at her, he saw an extraordinarily beautiful woman with shimmering silver hair and radiant jade-green eyes. Then, she exclaimed in a loud voice, what the fuck was that about? Senior. The sixth elder didn't understand where the woman's anger came from. It was not uncommon for people to exit the Holy Sword Temple in ridiculous fashions, and she'd seen it many times. That doesn't count. The woman suddenly said. Excuse me. I said that doesn't count. I was forcefully ejected from the Holy Sword Temple, so I didn't come out on my own free will. I'm going back inside. Wait. Even if you're the Sword Empress, you cannot. Shut up. I just told you that I was forcefully removed. Said the woman, who turned out to be a Sword Emperor, a Sword Empress since she was female. Even after one learns Supreme Sword Aura and becomes a Sword Emperor, the Holy Sword Temple remains an excellent training ground to further improve their Supreme Sword Aura, hence why Sword Emperors continue to return to the place even after they achieve their title. But that's not possible. The Holy Sword Temple doesn't even have such a function. We've been managing the Holy Sword Temple for several eras now, but the only people it has ejected are those who have become corpses. You should know that since you're also part of our Holy Sword clan. The sixth elder exclaimed. Surprisingly, the silver-haired also belonged to the Holy Sword Temple. She's one of the 3 Sword Emperors in the Holy Sword clan? Yuan thought to himself as he watched the situation unfold. I know, but I am telling you that's what happened. Why would I lie about this? It's not like this is my first time entering the temple, said the Sword Empress. The sixth elder was left speechless, but she couldn't imagine the Sword Empress lying about such a thing, either. Unfortunately, regardless of the circumstances, once you leave the Holy Sword Temple, you're not allowed to enter again until your next turn, she said a moment later. Son of a bitch. The Sword Empress cursed again. I was so close to reaching the next level of Supreme Sword Aura, too. The Sword Empress suddenly snapped her head at Yuan and shouted, What the fuck are you looking at, huh? Senior, let's not take your anger out on a junior. Your reputation is already in the gutters because of your foul mouth, the sixth elder said as she shook her head. That's bullshit. He was staring at me so intensely, so I told him off. Yuan couldn't deny that he had been staring at her, though it was because of her potty mouth that was so out of place for someone of her stature and graceful appearance. I apologize. I didn't mean to stare. Yuan apologized. The Sword Empress suddenly narrowed her eyes and asked, Have we met before? No, I don't think so. What's your name? Yuan. The Sword Empress fell silent, seemingly in deep thought. Whatever, she said a moment later. I'll go get the next person on the wait list. Please don't do anything rash while I am away, said the sixth elder. What? You think I'm going to sneak back inside while you leave? You're mocking me. I didn't say that. The sixth elder said before leaving. Instead of leaving, the Sword Empress decided to stay around. Of course, she didn't have any intention of sneaking inside the Holy Sword Temple. Hey! The Sword Empress called out Yuan again. What is it? You're quite calm despite being in the presence of a Sword Empress, even though you're just a mortal. What are you even doing here? I was going to enter the temple to train, but I don't have the time to wait for my turn. You? Enter the Holy Sword Temple? There's no way. Don't lie to me. The Sword Empress immediately doubted him since she couldn't fathom a mortal passing the Blade of Tribulation trial. Why would I lie? Yuan showed her the golden badge given to him by the Holy Sword Maiden. Her eyes widened with surprise after seeing the badge, and she muttered, No way. She fell silent again, but she was staring at him with a piercing gaze. Are you sure we haven't met before? I can't shake this feeling that we have, she said. Yuan looked at her face and quickly dug through his memories. Sorry, but I really don't think we've met before, he responded a moment later. The Sword Empress remained silent, but she continued inspecting his appearance from head to toe. The sixth elder returned a few minutes later with a handsome middle-aged man following behind. Sword Empress Huang, it's an honor to meet you today. The sect leader of the Sword Descending Pavilion greeted her the moment he saw her. The Sword Empress merely nodded in acknowledgement. The sect leader glanced at Yuan but quickly ignored him after seeing that he was immortal. You can enter the Holy Sword Temple whenever you're ready, the sixth elder said to the sect leader a moment later. The sect leader nodded before approaching the massive entrance, quickly disappearing into the temple. But not even 2 seconds later, the sect leader could be seen flying out of the temple, just as the Sword Empress had been ejected minutes earlier. The sixth elder and the Sword Empress' eyes widened with disbelief after seeing this. What? They both muttered in a daze, unable to comprehend the situation. Chapter 2022, Holy Sword Temple, 3. Chapter 2022, Holy Sword Temple, 3, what the hell was that? The sect leader exclaimed with a confused face after stabilizing himself. What just happened? The sixth elder asked even though she already had an idea of what he was going to say. I don't know. After I entered the temple, I felt a powerful force pulling me back before I even made it to the other side. The next thing I knew, I was outside again, said the sect leader, disbelief etched across his face. So exactly what happened to me, but in my case, I was in the middle of training. Said the Sword Empress. Hey, that doesn't count, right? I clearly didn't even begin my training. The sect leader turned to look at the sixth elder, who wore a perplexed expression on her face. Since this was the first time anything like this had happened at the Holy Sword Temple, she wasn't sure how to deal with it. However, considering the situation, it wouldn't be fair for the sect leader, who clearly didn't get any training done, if they didn't allow him to try again. Since this is an unprecedented event, and it's clear that you didn't enter the temple properly, it'll allow you to enter again. The sixth elder eventually decided to do the unprecedented and allow someone to enter the temple again after they left. The sect leader thanked her before walking toward the entrance again. However, the Sword Empress stopped him and said, "Wait a moment." When the sect leader stopped and looked at her with a questioning gaze, she continued, "You have already been rejected by the Holy Sword Temple once. If you try to enter again, there is a chance that it might hurt you instead of just ejecting you." The sect leader's body trembled slightly at this possibility. Now that I think about this, she's right. The sixth elder agreed. This is a highly unusual and unprecedented issue. If you attempt to enter again, we cannot guarantee your safety. While countless people have died while training inside the Holy Sword Temple, this was a different situation. The sect leader swallowed nervously. He wouldn't have any regrets if he died while training inside the Holy Sword Temple, but he'd never be able to die peacefully if he died trying to enter the Holy Sword Temple. Then what should I do? The sect leader asked for their opinion even though he already knew the answer. You can either try to enter again or just leave it as it is, said the Sword Empress. The sect leader gritted his teeth in frustration. Had waited hundreds of years for this moment, even leaving his sect for a prolonged period of time just to prepare for the Holy Sword Temple. Yet, after all that preparation, does he have to leave empty-handed? He couldn't accept this result. He started at the open entrance, which was now emitting an ominous aura, with a serious pondering face. Eventually, he walked forward and said, "I'll take the risk." The sixth elder and the Sword Empress didn't say anything since they had no authority in his decision, and they'd already warned him of the potential danger. They all watched as the sect leader disappeared into the Holy Sword Temple. Time seemed to slow as everyone waited, tense and uncertain, to see if the sect leader would be ejected from the Holy Sword Temple once more. Seconds passed, but nothing happened. Did he manage to get inside? The sixth elder questioned out loud. Looks like, before the Sword Empress could even finish her sentence, something came out of the Holy Sword Temple. However, it wasn't the sect leader, but a glowing orb of light. Holy fuck. The Sword Empress subconsciously cursed when she saw this. The sect leader had been ejected once more, but this time, it was only his soul. His physical body was nowhere to be seen. This could mean only one of two things: either his body had been destroyed, or he had been forcefully stripped from it as punishment for defying the Holy Sword Temple's warning. "And my physical body?" The sect leader exclaimed in shock after realizing had emerged from the Holy Sword Temple as just his soul. Sixth elder. This is unacceptable. How are you going to compensate me for this? The sect leader's angry voice rippled throughout the place. That's. Although they had warned him of the risks of entering again, and the Holy Sword Temple's malfunction wasn't directly their fault, others might not see it that way. After all, the Holy Sword clan owned and managed the temple, and if anything went wrong, they would be held accountable. The Sword Empress stepped forward and said, "Listen here, you little bastard. I warned you loud and fucking clear that something like this would happen, but you went ahead and risked it. You're lucky to have escaped with your life. You." The sect leader wanted to say something but was immediately interrupted by the Sword Empress. "However, it's true that the Holy Sword Temple is malfunctioning, and while we currently have no idea why, we'll compensate you for the trouble. We'll pay for the resources for your new physical body and some more, and we'll also allow you to enter the Holy Sword Temple without needing to wait once we figure out and fix the issue. Of course, that is if you want to come back here in the future. If you're not satisfied with the compensation, we can continue this at a later date in a more formal setting." The sect leader remained silent for a moment before responding, "This isn't over. I'll contact the Holy Sword clan again after I deal with my physical body." After saying that, the sect leader flew away, disappearing into the starry sky. Fuck, what a pain in the ass. The Sword Empress cursed out loud after he left, rubbing her eyes in a stressed manner. This is indeed quite troublesome. How are we supposed to fix a problem we don't even understand? The sixth elder sighed. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.